We're going to call the meeting to order, actually, if we can. Please remember to sign in, and then if you speak, please identify yourself and the town that you're from, so that the TV audience knows who's on camera. So good evening, thank you for coming. We called the meeting to order here. We'll introduce ourselves and then we'll get started with the agenda. I'm Joe Winrick. I am a representative of Townsend and the chair of this board. Mike, you want to go ahead?
Mike Foley, at-large member from Townsend.
Ken McFadden, Newfane.
Christina Robinson, Jamaica. Lindsay Brooke from Newfane.
Al Glosson, Townsend, and vice chair of this board.
Emily Long, Newfane.
Trish Scott, at-large member from Townsend.
Drew Hazelton, Jamaica.
I'm Bill Antone, superintendent.
Mike Harrigan, Dean of Academics at Leland and Gray.
Bob Tebow, principal at Leland and Gray.
Thanks. Just another reminder, I was reminded by these note cards, there should be note cards in the audience. Again, if you have any questions about anything, you can ask them, but we'd also ask that you write them down and deposit them so that they get recorded on the public comment form so that they can be addressed. Okay, do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda, folks?
The location is incorrect again on the agenda.
Huh?
Oh, that's my fault.
We have a mea culpa from the end of the table. Again, we're at the library, not Dutton Gym. Okay, and the other thing is that there was an E under old business that somehow dropped off in revisions where we were going to talk about student board members again. That was a continuing discussion, so I'd like to just add the student board member back on as E under old business. If that's it, we'll move.
We also, just to let you know, 6 o'clock before the next meeting, we're going to have a policy committee meeting.
Okay. So policy, 6 p.m., September 17th. Thank you. That'll be here?
That'll be here.
Okay, thank you.
If somebody can get the doors open for us, that'd be nice.
We'll take care of that. Okay. Members of the public, anybody who's here that wants to discuss an issue other than what's on the agenda, if you're here to participate in the school choice or the 6th grade discussion or something else that's on the agenda, you'll have a chance to speak to that during that part of the meeting. If there's something else you're here to talk about or something you want to add or address the board for, now would be your time. Okay. Under correspondence, does anybody have anything? I have one thing. I have a letter from the WCEA declaring their intent to open negotiations with the West River Education District. That's the Wyndham Central Education Association. That's the union that represents the teachers and paraprofessionals and all the union staff. And they're asking for us to respond with dates and times that would be convenient to us. So that's why there's later an item on the agenda to finalize the negotiations committee. We had a tentative one, but we can flesh that out as long as it's not the whole board. But that's the only correspondence I have as of right now. Anybody else have anything? No? Okay. All right. First on the old business, we wanted to take care of the school choice discussion. We've had a lot of feedback about that and a lot of discussion about that. And according to our published timeline, tonight was the time where we were going to actually make a decision about whether or not we would be offering elementary school choice within the district for the first year of operation. Because if I say the dates, I'll screw them up. So, any discussion on that, folks? Thoughts? Input? Yes, Mike.
I'd just say that it seemed like there was a lot of people that were supporting that for the surveys that we saw, and overall I think it's good policy if we can do it, so I support that.
Okay. Drew?
I'm going to make a motion that the board
Thank you.
develop a policy and programs for offering intra-district school choice to families of students in the unified district.
Is there a second? Al? Thank you. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to develop a policy to offer inter-district school choice. Any discussion on that motion before we vote? Input?
Question.
Sure.
Did we receive any additional information?
Not statistically significant.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, so all in favor of the motion to, oh, Ken, go ahead. No. Oh, sorry. All in favor of the motion to develop the inter-district school choice policy, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, the ayes have it. Okay, so now because that motion passed, I had put on the agenda, or we had put on the agenda to discuss the policy in the policy committee, and we'll get to that right after sixth grade. But we'll talk about the development of the policy. So, sixth grade choice. We had, at the last meeting, we had asked our administration to show us what middle school would look like with a little more detail if we did move the sixth grade to Leland and Gray. Keep in mind that we asked for this at the last meeting. This is the first time that we've seen this, you've seen this, we're all seeing this together. It does not mean that this is what's going to happen or that any decisions have been made. This is just the rollout of the opportunity so that we can continue having this discussion and start answering some of the questions. I know that in the development of this, some of these questions that people were asking about what things would look like are answered, at least, under this model. So, Bob, you want to go ahead?
Sure.
Thank you.
So, this document, which is over here, if you need a copy of it, we're basically just going to walk through it. I don't have a fancy slideshow or anything. I do have a poster. I'll show you that later. So basically, we were charged with developing a plan that if the board makes the decision to move the sixth grade to Leland and Gray at the start of next school year, what would it look like? How would we set it up? So we'll talk a little about that. We gathered input from a variety of people, the sixth grade teachers, Chris and Joyce and Monica, from the three schools, the three principals who are here tonight as well. We have a district school counselor / nurse / social worker group representing not only those three schools in the high school, but also the SU at large. They gave me a position paper, if you will, with answering some focused questions. The middle school team, the existing 7th and 8th grade team had input, gave us their thoughts. There was the public survey data, which I think is over here as well. We took that information into consideration, as well as comments that we've heard and observed at meetings around what concerns might be. We got input from the superintendent, our director of curriculum, and then there were 4 of us that kind of sat in a room and pounded it out. So I want to just introduce those 4 people so that you guys all know who was in the room at the time that we developed this. So Mike Harrigan, who introduced himself earlier, is our Dean of Academics. Mike's just out of the classroom last year in the middle school setting. Social studies teacher, has taught in a couple different states in the middle school, so that's his entire experience. Johanna Laskowski-Doak is back here. Take a little wave, Johanna.
Hello.
Johanna is a recovering middle school teacher as well. She is our instructional coach here at Leland and Gray, and has spent a dozen years or so, 10 or so, in the classroom in the middle school realm in science. Ashley Matson, who is seated next to her. Ashley is our current middle school English language arts teacher. Ashley has also been teaching in the age of 10 neighborhood. That neighborhood? 7. We're near the neighborhood. She is also our team leader in our existing middle school, and myself. So we were the ones that were kind of in the room to develop the plan. So I want folks to have that context. So we talked about several different options. We talked about, as you can see in here, an integrated 6-8 model where all the kids are kind of together and mixed. We talked about a model with each grade individually. There's a sixth, there's a seventh, there's an eighth. We talked about one that had two teams, a 6-7 team and an 8-9 team. And then we talked about one that has 7 and 8 continuing sort of what they're doing and having a separate sixth. We initially called that the 6th grade islands, but we decided that it wasn't really an island, it was more of a peninsula. So that's where we came up with the term the peninsula plan. We believe that this concept, and I'll get into the details of it, based on what we've heard around the issues and areas of concern from parents and from staff members, gives the 6th graders sufficient time to transition, knowing that they're coming from an environment where they've had 1 or 2 teachers, or there's only 4 or 5 teachers in the building, to an environment where they will eventually have multiple teachers from room to room when they reach the high school. So how do we sort of transition them into that world while providing the supports that they need academically and social emotional needs as well. And yeah, so that's sort of where we started. So what we have right now in the middle school is a 7-8 integrated team, and the team of teachers teach 7th and 8th grade combined. The 7th and 8th graders have exploratories combined, they eat lunch together. They basically, and they're in their houses or their advisory program together. So they basically are mixed all day long. Knowing that we wanted to have more of a gradual release approach for the 6th grade, we created this model to sort of address that. I did mention one under Roman numeral 2 that we don't need any additional counseling staff to support this plan. We have 2 full-time counselors, Leland and Gray. We would just shift the responsibility so that one would be a 6-8 and one would be a high school, rather than a 7-9 and a 10-12. So basically what we would have is this program where we would have 2 6th grade teachers who are members of the middle school team. One of them would be a ELA humanities licensure in the middle grades, and one would be a math STEM licensure. And so what we would say is that we believe that the best approach there would to have people who are content specialists. We're not talking about people, we're talking about positions at this point, so just want to make that clear. We don't have people picked for this, we're just talking about that conceptually. That we would have the 6th graders really separate during their core learning opportunities in ELA, humanities, and STEM and math, and for phys ed and health. They would be together, they would join the mainland off the peninsula for their house and for their exploratories at the end of the day, which would give them the access to those curricular areas that we want them to have access to. So we basically, that's what it would look. So thinking about our existing team, what we would do is we would keep them doing what they're doing and add these 2 people who are endorsed in these areas. We would mix the houses so that these 2 new people would also have a house in the middle school, which would be mixed. Eventually, 6-8, the 2 new positions would start out with a 6-7 mix, and that we wouldn't move any 8th graders into that house. We'd keep them where they went, but then as it transitioned through, we'd eventually cycle everyone in, so there would be 6 through 8. And the advisory is just there's a description at the bottom of page 2, but basically what that does is that those meet in the morning, which is sort of serves as a home room, it's sort of a home base to kind of get situated for the day. They get their announcements, they figure out what their schedule looks like. We have a rotating schedule in the middle school, so it is a little bit more confusing than what the 6th graders would have. So this is an opportunity right now where they kind of get them situated and figure out what's going on. And then right now they go off into their classes, so the 6th grade would then go to these two rooms and meet with these 2 teachers. Eventually they go to lunch, and then they come back to their house for a longer period of time in the middle of the day. And that's where we talk about our executive functioning skills. We're making sure the kids are organized. We're doing deliberate teaching around those areas. And we're doing community building as well. We're also during that time doing skill building to fill in gaps what the kids have in academic skills or organizational skills. So that is the basic concept of a house. The exploratories are a place, again, where they would be mixed. Students would get a limited choice in that. In other words, there would be an option for some choice that we would coordinate with parents to help them select that. They would not necessarily access all of the ones that I've listed here on top of page 2, depending on what they were interested in. If, for example, if they were in band or chorus, those would last all year long, whereas the other ones are really a semester long. And the way we have it set up right now is they meet in a 3-day rotation, so they basically get 3 exploratories in the fall and another 3 in the spring. But again, if you have band, that counts as 1 in each, so you really have 4 after you have band. I don't know if that makes sense, but I can explain that more as people have questions. We have a personal development strand as taught by a school counselor, which is required for all of our students for obvious reasons. We want this to be a place where we're doing Tier 1 universal instruction around how to be a human being and how to function in the middle school environment, as well as career development and other areas like that we're going to go through the school counseling curriculum. Technology is another one that's required, and that is because we have a one-to-one system here with Chromebooks. We roll out those Chromebooks with kids, so we talk about the appropriateness. We teach them how to use the Google Apps and the digital citizenship component. And then we have sort of the ones that would be choice. We have family and consumer science, art, Western language and culture with an emphasis on Spanish, Eastern language and culture with an emphasis on Chinese, and of course band and chorus. Well, those are the exploratory. Lunch would be integrated as well, and the 4th one down here as far as things that are integrated would be special education services will also be integrated. So the students under letter C are separate as 6th graders in several places. That is in the 4 core subjects as well as PE and health. And down below the model schedule, I actually report out that with those times being 6th grade only, that means that about 62% of their day is spent just with 6th grade. The rest of the day is mixed with something else. We talk about the middle level expertise of the team. Right now, we've talked about this before. We're in year 2 of a 3-year partnership with the Tarrant Institute, which will this be available online at some point so we can get links?
It's already up.
It is
It
now.
is up, okay. So you can click on those links and bring you to those sites. The Tarrant Institute is a middle level professional development organization that's affiliated with UVM, and they provide us with free services. We have a coach that comes here at least once a week, sometimes more, with guided professional development around project-based learning, technology integration, personalized learning plans, student-led conferences, all those things that the research says are best practice in a middle school environment. Our staff in the middle school has also spent a full week this past June at the Middle Grades Institute, which is put on by Tarrant, and they receive a full week of professional development that was actually for credit through Castleton as well. And so that's one piece of expertise. The other resource that we would rely on and do rely on now is NELMS, which is the New England League of Middle Schools. They have an annual conference that we sent our team to in recent years. And I point this last part out because I just want to make sure that folks on the board realize that we have the ability to basically contract with them to do a middle level assessment on our programming if we want. For a fee, they will come and spend anywhere from a day to a week assessing our programming and giving us advice on what we should do next. So that's something that we could also utilize if the board felt that was an important step to take. We could do that this year in anticipation of what it would look like for next year. I have here an example schedule. This is, you can see the students start their day in their house, and that's a mixed area. Then they move on to their core subjects with, as I envision, a brief hiatus in between their core areas for some physical activity or health education, and then they come back and they do the other side. And there's 2 6th grade classes. They basically flip-flop those 2 core subjects, and they would go through. Then they would have lunch, which is mixed. Then they'd go back to this house again in the early afternoon, again, regroup for the day, do some skill building, and then we send them into their exploratories. And this shows you the A, B, and C, that there are 3 different days, and they would basically rotate through those three sessions over the course of a semester.
Leaving at 2:35 also.
Yeah, where was that?
There, 2:35.
Oh, yep.
2:40.
So I did note this, that we have, one of our plans was to address the, this is a little to do with the physical environment of the building, which I'll get into with my poster. But the school day ends at 2:40 right now, and the buses are rolling in between 2:35 and 2:40. What we would anticipate doing is releasing the middle school at 2:35 from their exploratories, which would give all the middle school kids, but the sixth grade in particular, the ability to go from their exploratories, which are spread throughout the building. There's some right here at the bottom of the stairs where the art room is. There'd be some on C level where the fax room is. Band and chorus are obviously down in D level, and some are going to be on A level. But the idea is that this gives them an opportunity to kind of get through the halls and make their way up to the buses and hit their lockers without having the high school kids kind of moving around and causing that level of disruption for them, making them feel a little bit safer in their environment. And just one more thing about the houses, there is a little bit of a description here. The middle school team has taken a lot of pride in the construction of these houses, and we sit as a team, we sat in the spring and added the seventh graders who are moving up into those houses very purposefully, making sure we have a balance of kids, not only gender, grade, town, trying to balance learning challenges, everything, so that we have a really good mix of kids in these houses. And the teachers have named their houses based on Vermont forest animals. You can see the list here, and the kids really have an identity around that house and really come to terms with, I'm a moose, and that's important to me to be a moose. And Mother Moose over here, it's important to her that she is looking after her little mooselings.
Yeah, we also did for anyone who's seen Harry Potter, we did like a sorting hat, the sorting hat type activity where the students were introduced into their houses and they were cheered on by the returning 8th graders. So we did that.
You actually saw 8th graders like coming over and like high-fiving, like, welcome to our house. It was pretty cool to see that experience. It was meaningful. Yeah. So they really take that seriously. And then the last page is the physical elements of the building. And we have a clearer version of this. I know it's hard to read on your
Here, or
maybe over here in front of Drew.
it'll be the, I can't.
Yeah, especially if you have a black and white copy, it's hard to kind of see the differentiation. But right now, this is a picture of the floor plan of A level, which is the upstairs when you come in the main door. The pink rooms represent the existing middle school classroom. So as you can see, we already have the middle school focused not only on A level, but really on one half of A level. And the other half of A level currently is high school classes. So what our plan would be to make those two yellow classrooms the two sixth grade classrooms, so that they're the closest to the main office, the nurse's office, the counseling office, and they're right around the corner from the rest of the middle school team. Their lockers would be right in front of those classrooms, whereas the 7th and 8th grade lockers would be around the hallways by the pink classrooms. You can see that there are some what we call dual-use classrooms next to the two yellow ones. Those are classrooms that what we would put in there is our world language teachers, because they are the ones who teach both middle and high school and can move. An art teacher teaches middle and high school, but I can't move the art room. So those two classrooms we can put on A level, meaning there'll be some high school kids accessing them, but it also is where the middle school kids would access that exploratory.
And those are also right next to the stairwell, correct?
Yep, and those are nearest to the stairwell so that the high school kids can kind of pop up and then pop back down again in the morning when they have their classes. So that would be the A-level bathroom. Right now, all the bathrooms in the school are just general use, but what we would do in the situation is we would make the A-level set of bathrooms middle school bathrooms only, and the high school students who even have classes up here in those two rooms would have to go down to these bathrooms on B level. And so we would make that separate middle and high school bathrooms, again, to have that physical separation. However, we do want to be clear. I know people are worried about what kind of interactions my kid's going to have with high school kids. The reality is, as you can see from this building, this is not designed for us, and I've worked in a building that was a middle high that had a middle school wing and a high school wing, and all the shared stuff was in the middle, and kids did not go in either side, and the shared things were in the middle. We live in an octagon. It's really hard to do that. So I wanted to just list under C here the reasons why a high school kid might come on to A level. Other than the dual use classrooms, they're going to come up there to go to the main office. They're going to come up here to Use the counselor's office to go to the nurse's office. You can see the IT office is on the pink side. They already do that. The work-based learning office is the one at the top of the stairs. I can't even read the number on here. A13.
Something odd.
And then our main conference room that we utilize for all sorts of different kinds of meetings, and sometimes students are coming to those, is in A14. The registrar is in the office next to that. So there's lots of reasons why a high school kid would have to come on A level. I just want people to know that there's no way to avoid that. That's the reality of this. So that really hopefully outlines some of the separation that we would use in the physical realm, and give you a pretty good idea of what we would be doing academically and social emotional realm as well.
And Bob, can I piggyback on the high schoolers
You
upstairs?
absolutely can.
So there also is never a reason to have like a lot of high school kids up here. So it's not huge chunks of high school students like roaming through A level. The only time that would happen would be perhaps in the morning, but most high school students congregate down by the gym anyway. And then in the afternoon, when they're coming up to get outside, there's high school students that are on buses, but our middle schoolers are already leaving early. So if there are high schoolers up on A level, it's isolated. It's only a couple people, and they're going to see the nurse, counselor, office, what have you. So it's not like masses of high school students coming up, walking through the middle school section of the school.
So we just want folks to realize that we do the best we can in separating that, but it is the reality of being in one school together, just like sixth graders are mixing with kindergartners now. I mean, there's no way to avoid that. It just happens in the buildings. We also, as I mentioned in an earlier meeting, we have several opportunities where we intentionally put our community together for certain things. We have a Monday morning assembly that we do where the whole community is in the gym together for announcements and fun activities and presentations by students. That's something that we do. The kids are separated by age. Teachers are sitting with them. So those are the kind of events that we do with groups, but we always do it with intention and purpose to make sure that people are feeling safe and that kids have as much separation as possible in those environments. And even in our assemblies now, starting this year, what we've been doing is we've been holding the middle school down while the high school goes up to class, and then we bring the middle school back up by house. So they're, again, even coming up the stairs after that, they're not mixing. We're kind of keeping them separate as much as possible. So.
And there's gaps in between lunches, so it's not like high school gets released and middle school comes right back down. There's time in between those, so it's been intentional with how much interaction they would have together, and it's limited, and it's also very structured what would take place.
So I don't know if the board has questions or not, clarifying or otherwise.
Questions from the board?
I have one.
Thank you for the presentation.
Sure.
Extremely thorough, well thought out. I appreciate the.
We had lots of
the work that
input
went in. You can
and
tell
great team of people.
tell the amount of work that went into that and the various people that helped you with that. So. Question, Lindsay, and then.
So, I'm a little slow. Can you go back to the exploratories for me? Because I don't understand how many things are they actually, because one of my big pros on the pro list for me is extra opportunities. So how many extra opportunities are they really gonna get?
So the way that it works right now, which is gonna be the same as it would under this plan for the sixth graders, is that the kids get basically 6 slots to fill. 3 in the fall, 3 in the spring. The A, B, and the C.
Okay.
That being said, the vast majority of them are only semester-long offerings. So if you are not in band or chorus, you will get 6 different things.
Okay.
If you're in band only, let's say, but not chorus, that will take up 2 slots because it will run all year. So you'll get that one plus 4 more.
Okay.
If you're in band and chorus, then that takes up 4 slots, then you only get 2 more.
Okay.
So that's it really depends on what your offerings are and what you're choosing to take.
Of those, one of them has to be the personal development thing, and one of them has to be the technology.
That's the way
Part-time?
that's the way we did it this year, and I mean, we will spend so those are both new this year.
Okay.
And the thinking going into it is that it would be a 2-year cycle of curriculum, that we would sort of loop the curriculum. The kids would stay for 2 years, but it'd be different each year.
Okay.
So over the course of a 2-year cycle, the kids would get the full experience. How that rolls out into with the 6th grade, that's something that I mean, these are teachers that are doing this for the first time. Right now, 2 weeks in, it's hard for me to be able to say to them, so, imagine the 6th graders here, what would that look like? Do we want to talk about a 3-year rotation, or do you just take it once, do you take it twice, and then you, so those are some details we don't have answer at this point. But at this point, we're sticking to the idea that those two would be required, because we believe that those are two areas of skill development that really shouldn't be optional, I guess.
Okay.
And we consider that vital for our middle school experience to have that, because there is so much change between 6th and 8th grade that the students go through. We feel like that personal development class is pretty vital. And same with technology. You know, we're giving them, you know, a one-to-one Chromebook, so we need to teach them A, how to use it, and B, how to use it safely and smartly.
Right, so that really you could say, instead of A, B, C, it's really sort of A is the mandatory things, and then you have B and C to, right now,
Sure.
to fill up with your choice.
Yep, you could end up with the 2 mandatories in the fall, and
That's true.
right, yeah, but yes,
Okay.
if you want to think of it that way, that's probably the easiest way to think about it, yeah. So you get 4 choices, 4 slots to pick, to fill in.
Perfect, thank you.
Howie, you had a question?
What's the plan for the 6th graders between the end of the school day and the start of their after-school sports activities?
So all middle school programming happens right after school. So 2:45 practices start for sports. Drama is usually starting at the same time. We don't have Hay Help anymore because we lost our 21C funding, but we do have a tutoring program that's sort of a homework help and skill building with a licensed math teacher and a licensed English teacher. That happens 3 days a week, right after school till 4:15, and that's when the sports practice is done as well, because there is a late bus that comes through at 4:30.
So let's say a 6th grader who's playing soccer will start soccer practice immediately after school and be fully supervised until that late bus?
Well, yeah, until the late bus picks them up, or if the parents are picking them up at that time. Yep.
Questions from the board?
And I since you mentioned it, Howie, we did talk about this earlier, was that with the sports programming, that the Vermont Principal Association does consider really 5 through 8 to be middle school, so we can have 6th graders on our middle school programs as they currently exist, which could mean, based on numbers, you could end up with 2 teams instead of 1 in certain places, depending on the sport and the gender and the interest level, which would actually be better in a lot of cases, so you get a lot more playing time built in. So yeah, they would be part of our program here.
Mike?
Sure, and this is a great job on this. I went back and watched the last meeting, and we asked for this, but we also asked, what's it gonna cost? Is it gonna take additional resources or not? And so this means it's free because it's not in here?
Well, so the 2 additional staff members are the cost.
2 additional staff
Yeah,
members.
and I'm sure Bill or Lori could give you an estimate of what that would be based on averages, but that would be the only cost to do it this way.
Lindsay?
Another one. I've had a couple of different community members approach me about specifically sports with this, and I'm wondering if you know the answer to how many of the teams that you compete against have 6th graders on those teams.
Most, some have 5th, yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
Okay. Anybody else on the board? Open it up to the room. Questions about what we've seen
I have a
tonight?
question.
Sure.
With the way we have the middle school upstairs, has there been any instances with commingling of high schoolers and middle schoolers?
I assume you mean inappropriate commingling.
Yeah.
Okay. Because commingling in and of itself isn't necessarily a problem.
Right.
It'd be the inappropriate nature of that.
Any complaints about that?
Sure. Over time, yeah, it's happened. I guess what I would say is one of the benefits of a small school, and I think there's many, which is why I'm here, but one of the benefits of a small school is that you can't get away with anything here. People know exactly what's going on. The teachers hear the gossip, they know who's hanging in the hallway with who. Like, it's a small school. This is not a giant place where we don't know what's happening. So when we hear a sniff around, there's a 9th grade or 10th grade boy kind of prowling around some middle school girls, we're intervening with that. We're having conversations with both parties around what's involved with that and why it's not appropriate. So yeah, we're too small to not notice that stuff, And because, particularly right now, if for those of you that know the building at all, you'll know that when you come into the main office right here, if you're leaving the main office and you want to get to, over here, I know the building. It's upside down, Ken, give me a break. When you come in here and you're headed to B level, the shortest way is to go this way. So that's the way that most high school kids, and most staff frankly, go, because it's shorter than going all the way around. So we don't get a lot of high school kids wandering this way. Some, but not most. Most of them go the shorter way, so.
Those that aren't that anxious to get to class.
That's a whole other problem.
I thought as a high school teacher who is not teaching middle school now, I might be able to address the, the contact that high schoolers would have with middle school. I never see the middle school students, and I never see the middle school teachers, because my schedule is completely different from theirs. So in terms of what it would be like for a sixth grader, I'm guessing that there will be very little opportunity for them to interact, because I don't even have time as an adult, so.
And the passing times are different in between the periods, so that helps.
Thanks. Beth,
I was just wondering.
remember to introduce yourself for the
Beth
camera.
Castells.
Tammy Clausen, Leland and Gray, or Townsend.
I was just wondering why do you want the sixth graders?
Well, I guess, I mean, to be clear, I was directed to come up with a plan that what it would look like if they were brought here.
Why does the board want the sixth graders?
You'd have to ask the board down there, I guess.
Is it a minor thing?
No.
I know that your population here at Leland and Gray is declining. I think your senior class this year is your biggest class with 65 or so, if I'm guessing. So does that have anything to do with it?
No. We're one district with one student population count, and therefore one pot of revenue that funds all the schools. So where the students attend doesn't change the budget for anybody.
But if you
This
don't
is
have enough students here at Leland and Gray, then that would, I mean, what is your minimum amount of students you can have here at Leland and Gray to stay open? I'm just curious.
we haven't really discussed that number, and I think it depends a lot on who you ask. You know, there are voices in Montpelier that will tell you we're already too small and should be closed, and all our kids should go somewhere else. We're trying to stop that.
Well,
I mean, this is based on opportunity for the kids. If you look at the list of the opportunities that the students would have in the exploratories, that's a fairly expanded list of the opportunities that they have now in elementary school. Bob, you want to comment
Well, I
on
was just
that?
going to say that with regards to, when you said about the state would probably like to see us closed, we're probably that small. When you think about high schools in Vermont, when they set us up in divisions for sports competition, there's 4 divisions in Vermont, and we are in Division 3. And we're solidly in the middle of Division 3. We're not at the bottom as far as our numbers go. So that means that there's a full division and half a division smaller than us for high schools.
Divisions are by the size.
By size, by numbers of boys and girls, yes. Each sport, you're put in a division based on your population of boys and girls for that sport. So we're almost, we're not near the top of Division 3, but if we were 4 or 5 schools higher, we'd be smack dab in the middle of Vermont high schools. So when you talk about that, I don't know that they're looking to close places like us. I think Black River is a good example of a place that had 12, 15 kids in a grade. But there's a lot of places that are smaller.
Can I just follow up on that?
Yeah.
We've been Division 3 for quite some
Forever,
time.
yeah.
Right, so I would just say that while the student population in Vermont has declined, it's declined across the board, so we have not really changed our standing over the many years. I don't know the last time we were-
Brattleboro used to have well over 1,000 kids, and they're down around 800 now. I mean, we've all gotten small together.
Right, thank you.
Get a hand in the back there, 1 second. I can't tell who was which, and I can't really see you.
Fiona from New Fame. My question is, why did you decide for 2 teachers in 6th grade? Why are you choosing a humanities model and a math STEM model? And is that model similar in 7th and 8th grade? Is it the same where there's a humanities model, or is there individual teachers for each subject area?
Yep, I can answer that. So at the reason we did 2 was that we're assuming the cohort to be about 40 kids. So we don't want 40 kids in one room, so we figure that's about 2 classes. The reason that we broke it out by content in that way. At the 7th and 8th grade currently, there's separate teachers for each of the core subjects. What we felt was that having 4 or 5 different teachers was developmentally not appropriate for 6th grade, given what they're coming from out of these small schools. So that having that 1 year where they kind of get 2 teachers who have specialty areas in those core subjects gives them that transition from one teacher who's a generalist to these 2 kind of more specific, to then every subject is a different teacher. So it was really more of a gradual release kind of model is where it came from.
And to answer a couple of those questions, instructionally with the Common Core, it makes a lot of sense to have 6th through 8 together. One of the reasons why when we looked at having a 6-7 team or an 8-9 team is grades 8 and 9 are not on the same, what they call band. There's a K through 5 band, and there's a 6 through 8 band, and a 9 through 12. They're all very different, but individually they're aligned. So like through 6 through 8, there's a steady increase in rigor. And one of the benefits of having 6th grade here is they would have content specialists for humanities and for STEM. And those 6th grade teachers would also get to plan vertical alignment with the 7th and 8th grade teachers so that we could ensure they're getting the high quality instruction grades 6 through 8. So that will be one of the benefits in general of having a 6 through 8 floor, I guess, not school, but floor.
There was another hand in the back, right? Go ahead.
Tina Bills, Brookline. So I've been to a bunch of these meetings, and I think the information we got tonight is really informative, and a lot of what questions I had. My kids now will be, if this does go through, my son will be the very first at age 10 coming to Leland and Gray for 6th grade, and then my daughter will be the 2nd class. So obviously I have lots of concerns about it. But a piece that I'm not hearing anything about, I think it's being overlooked, the academic piece that they get at Newbrook right now is great. I don't doubt it'll be any different here. So I'm not too concerned about that. But for me, it's the emotional, physical piece. And 6th graders need recess. We're wiping out the playground. They're getting no playground time. They're getting no recess, no free time. I mean, if you look at how important play is to the brain, to being emotionally developed, there is a lot of information about that, and we are just getting rid of play time and the free time. I saw you have PE in there. Is that going to be every single day, 5 days a week?
I mean, that's our thinking right now, either phys ed or health. Yeah, intentionally breaking up the core subjects with some physical activity. We don't have a playground, so I mean, it's not.
I understand that,
So
and that's
we figured this was the best way to resolve that.
right. But I'm saying I don't think it is. I think it's a really important piece that kids need. You're going to see. I feel like if they don't get that, you're going to see behavior problems with kids that don't usually have behavior problems. You're going to see emotional overload. Kids need to get rid of that energy. They need to get rid of that stress, and they are way too young, in my opinion, to be sitting down and not have any release, to get outside, get some fresh air, even if they're throwing balls or jumping up and down or something. I feel like this environment is much, much too restrictive, as good as the academic is going to be and sounds like. But I think we're really not putting enough emphasis on something that's just being overlooked. I feel that that's a really huge piece.
And I don't want to argue it, except you have some points. What I would say is that when this plan, I mean, people have to realize that there's benefits to it and there's costs to it, and that the board will have to make a decision based on whether or not the benefits outweigh the costs. One of the things that I will just add to the conversation, just so you're aware, is that the middle school kids, first of all, if you've ever been in the lunchroom with middle school kids, I'm sorry, but they choke their food down and they're done within 15 minutes. So what we do typically is once the kids are finished eating, there's a group of staff, and when the weather's nice, they go outside. They go out, if you're in town around noontime, you'll see kids on the front lawn. That's what they're doing. I mean, again, there's no playground, but even with 7th and 8th grade, we do bring them out there. When the weather's cold, we're bringing them to Dutton for that time. It's not a lot of time. It's not probably what you're looking for, Tina, but we do address that now. We've been doing that for several years, and it is something that happens. So just so folks know that we are thinking about that, and we're trying to address it the best way we can in this environment.
I would like to just add on to
Well,
that.
1 sec.
So,
Oh, God.
Johanna, I live in Newfane.
I totally agree with what you're saying, Tina. I would not want my middle school child to be here without any sort of movement breaks at all either. So the other piece to that is there is the lunchtime where kids get a lot of physical activity out. It's also part of best practice as a middle school teacher to be aware of when those times are and when, you know, to read your class when they need a body break or a brain break. And it's already sort of part of how our middle school teachers teach. And I think it's also a benefit of having just 2 teachers for the 6th grade. They have 105 minutes, you know, at a time with the kids, so they can use that time and break up that time as they need to. So while it might not be recess on the playground, they still have an opportunity to take the kids and take a break. You know, you can do physical activities that are still focused on academics and not necessarily going outside and playing basketball. So I think there's a lot of ways to incorporate activity into the learning, and that's, you know, sort of what we believe in anyway.
So, Tina, obviously having a PE teacher in the family, I certainly have a dog in the fight. And I would completely agree with you, physical activity, hugely important. And I think by the way of reading this, it would be 30 minutes a day, either PE or health.
Well, that's right. So, yeah, so if there's a health day, maybe it's not physical activity as much, but
Right.
but yes, we're
And
open to
currently,
it
I would
daily.
say any model that we have or any school in our district, we don't have that 3 days a week, 5 days a week of PE or health.
At least every day, sometimes 3 times a day.
Agreed, but I think if we have the PE, structured PE, 5 days a week or health, probably equates to it.
Not because at our school, health takes half of the year.
Right. Bob, how would you see the balance of PE and health? Would it be 4-1, 3-2?
I mean, they're already having
Wait.
electives about personal growth and you know.
Can we just get recognized before we speak?
Stevenson from Jamaica. Hi, so I'm just saying, could we entertain the idea of instead of having the personal growth class and the health class, combining those two and assuring that the 6th grade has the physical activity?
That's actually what I whispered to him
Just
like
whispered.
30 seconds ago. Because he said a minute ago with Carter, who's our middle school counselor, with Carter teaching this class for the first time. We can't say how it would look like with 6th grade, but one of the things it could look like is one of those loops being, yeah, basically 6th grade health.
Well, Carter doesn't have a license in PE, he has an undergraduate degree in physical education. But part of the challenge too for us is we do have to make sure that people are getting licensed teachers doing those things. So that's part of why the phys ed was sort of separate at this point, because it's a separate person. In fact, we don't have a clear pic. I mean, this is put together in like a week or two, so I don't have a clear picture of even who would be doing that, and whether or not they would have whether or not they'd be endorsed for health and PE, or there's 2 different people. That part I don't have the details to that yet. We just knew it was a good way to break it up. There's lots of potential for this, and as we go down, if the board supports it and we start thinking about the details, really digging in, there's a lot of things that we would have to dig into, and I would want particularly the guys who are brand new doing this stuff for the first time to have some time to, you know, figure out what they're doing first, and then talk about what next year could look like. On that vein, though, Joe, I just want to, if I could add one more thing. If the board does go down this road, one of the things, so we have a transition process that we're cleaning up because it hasn't been awesome in my couple of years here, from 6th to 7th. In thinking about if this happens, we would be transitioning 2 cohorts of kids simultaneously, the 5th and the 6th. And so thinking about how that would have to be is also going to take some time and some logistical planning. And then as part of that, we have students from Wardsboro and Athens Grafton and you know, potentially Dover from time to time, Floodbrook, like I said, come in 9th grade. But these other schools who would still come to us in 7th, so we would have a couple of different transition slots and times where certain kids would join us and certain kids would come later. So I mean, there's a lot of things to kind of think about and how we would approach the transition piece. One of the things that we heard a lot of was the 6th grade trip. Was something that people were like, well, what's going to happen to the trip? And you know, just things like that. We'd have to figure out what that looks like. Does that mean that the 6th grade would wait until they're all here together and do a trip, and they would do it collectively for that 1 year, and then it would get bumped down to the 5th grade class back in the elementary schools? Like, I don't know. There's a lot of conversation that would have to happen on that one, but that would be things that we've thought about and haven't solved yet, so.
Ken, you have a question, then I got a hand in the back, and then I got another
Well,
one here.
not more, it's more of it's gonna give you another question, which is now, me being from Newfane and being on the Newbrook board, is they were discussing over here about, you know, what does this do to the population? Is it because Leland and Gray is declining? And is, you know, like you said, some people at Mount Pilgrim are saying they're too small already, let's just, you know. But, so, on the other end of that, and I know this from Brookline and Newfane merging together, which is when you're taking in approximately a sixth of the students out of each elementary school to come up here. And by doing that, what are you doing to the sustainability of the smaller elementary schools? You're making them less sustainable. You're making each building less sustainable. And it's gonna force a budget for, you know, your whole one budget is gonna force the elementary schools to look at it and say, this isn't feasible, we're gonna have to find a way to cut this, we're gonna have to close a school. Which I realize some people are all for that, that would be a last resort for me, even though, you know, but I'm just throwing that out there.
Thanks.
Do we know what that sustainable line is gonna be for an elementary school?
We would have to talk to, you know, probably Bill and Lori. We also have all the elementary school principals here. Maybe they want to comment on what they think taking the sixth grade out of their school does to their school. You know, maybe not, but they certainly could if they wanted to. But I have, there's a hand in the back, and then I got a Lindsay, and then I think we're all over the place. So whoever's in the back there, I apologize, all I can see is your hand.
Okay, I'm Joyce Van Palen. I live in Newfane and I teach sixth grade. And I can see you've done a lot of work here, but I want to go back especially to what Tina said about the play. Sixth graders need unstructured time to have free play. If all of their time to play is really not play, then they're not getting play. And at Newbrook, our students break for their middle of the day break at 5 of 12, and they head on outside to do choice type play. They enjoy playing with their younger friends. They have that opportunity to still be young because they are young. And then they come in and they have lunch. So they have a break. They don't come back to me until 10 of 1. And that time is they have choice, okay, to play, and they have choice as to where to sit, and they can still connect to younger kids during that time. That was one thing that I wanted to touch on. Another thing was, my question is, why is this happening so fast? It's just, I just feel like it's happening too fast. I don't know how Bob and the rest of people got their stuff together in this short amount of time. And as a sixth grade teacher, asking to respond and give input in such a short amount of time when I'm setting up my classroom, doing and getting ready for the first week of school and getting ready for 19 sixth graders to come to me. It was really hard to respond. In probably the best way that I had wanted to respond. And then the other thing is that you say that from 8 to 9:45 is going to be core ELA and social studies time of 105 minutes. Right now, best practice for sixth grade kids in the elementary school is to have a minimum of 1 hour of math. And we're doing 1.75 minutes of ELA a day and 1.75, I think I said minutes, 1.75 hours a day of ELA and 1.75 hours of math a day. And my concern is, what about those children that need so much more when they're coming at a time when they're just hitting the cusp of feeling good about stuff and getting their confidence built up. And my concern is that I don't know how that's going to be addressed when this is such a huge transition for them. Sixth grade year is a time for them to be the big guys and be able to continue with their reading buddies and be able to build confidence of being able to read to somebody else. I have some children that aren't even reading on grade level yet. But in sixth grade, things happen. The light bulb turns on for some of them, and I'm just concerned that if they're having this huge transition at that time, they're having to deal with too much stress. And so I'm just really concerned. So.
Thank you. Lindsay, you had a hand up?
Yeah, hold on, I have to get my thoughts back in order. So a little bit of, actually, good tie-in. I have a question from some community members about how, I don't know if you're the right one to answer this, but the current curriculum that fifth graders right now are getting and what they're doing right now in school, are they really going to be prepared for the transition? Is there something that a current fifth grade teacher should be doing that wouldn't have had time to get that done in order for them to be prepared, students to be prepared?
Well, I mean, I guess let me ask a clarifying question. The kids are going in the sixth grade either way, right?
Yes,
So the curriculum they're accessing would be the same curriculum. You're talking about like the core subject areas.
Yes, it's also are you mentally prepared? Are you physically prepared? Are you able to, organized enough to get into this new system? Would, say we're already doing this, would you want current fifth grade teachers to be somehow preparing students differently than they would normally be doing things for this transition? Would you want them to be like, hey, you really got to get them so that they can be organized on their own a little more, or whatever?
Yeah, I think I understand your question. Let me just shoot it back at you to make sure. The question is, are we looking for something different or special to happen at the year before transition to ensure that they're ready for the transition, academically, socially, the whole 9 yards? I think that the transition is going to occur at some point. And so, I mean, now, like from 5th to 6th versus from 6th to 7th, around having them prepared for, like, I feel like it's kind of the same thing. So I guess, like, does the 6th grade prepare them as well for 7th grade now? I mean, I guess the question is, it's going to be the same. I mean, there's going to be a transition.
Yes, there will be a transition anyway, but I guess my question comes about because if we choose to do this for next fiscal year, there wouldn't have been an opportunity within the elementary schools currently to have done something different if something different needed to be done.
Yeah. Well, the timetable for making the decision is what, Joe?
Well, we were supposed to make the decision tonight, but we could actually flex that to one more meeting and commit to make the decision to do this on the 17th to get some more feedback, because we just saw the proposal tonight. But I mean, we need to have this, we need to decide whether we're going to bring the 6th grade into the middle school before we prepare, because it has budgetary implications. So we need to do it this meeting or the next meeting.
So I guess the way I would answer your question of knowing that is that if we're making this decision in May, we don't have time to kind of think about that. If we're making the decision in next week, then I would say we have all sorts of time to kind of do that sort of longitudinal work with those teachers and figure out what the needs would be and how they may or may not be different, and figure that out much the same way they would do now. So, I mean, I guess I'm not sure. That's probably the best. I mean, Mike might have, having been a middle school teacher, have more to say about it.
Well, in regards to the organization, we were really pretty intentional on like requiring personal development. A lot of personal development is intentionally teaching them those skills. A lot of that house time Usually they go there in the morning, they have a sense of community in the morning, get settled. They also go back there after lunch, with the idea being that they leave house time knowing exactly what their plan is for getting things done that night and what they need to have done for tomorrow, because they won't really be having a lot of homework from the exploratory classes. So they leave house at 1:20 being fully organized for what they need to take home that night and what they need to have done by the start of school tomorrow. So with organization, we've been pretty intentional in a couple different ways to make sure that they have exposure to the right curriculum.
So really, a lot of that transition stuff is built into your program. You've given them time within your own program to make a lot of that, a lot of those connections
Yeah, I
happen.
guess what I'm saying is it's best practice for whatever grade the transition
Okay.
occurs to set kids up to be successful. Yeah.
And it kind of taps into the power of that gradual release of responsibility. They're not going from 5th grade to a junior high. They're going to go from a 5th grade to a middle school, and part of that middle school best practice is to have this gradual release of responsibility, which is why we went with the two, or asking for 2 6th grade specific teachers, which would limit the transitions, but would also provide them an easier transition into 7th grade.
Thank you.
Alicia, one sec, I got hands all over, but I see you. I got you late.
I've been trying to hold back and listen to everyone's feedback. I really appreciate the community feedback. I'll just bring up 3 things to add to the discussion. One, that I understand that the school board has been discussing, it feels like for years, a merger. So to a lot of board members, it doesn't feel as fast. But to the community, I understand that the tangible aspects of how this touches our life does seem very, very fast. 2, just to throw in the discussion, if we have school choice, what would it look like if you were to have, since we already have extra students merging in from Wardsboro at 7th grade and other towns from other grades, if we had one elementary school, I'll just throw Newbrook out there because most of the people I've talked to that are opposed are in that area, stay with their 6th graders and be the school choice for 6th grade in elementary school while still offering a 6th grade in high school. I know it's a little muddy, don't shoot me yet. But what would that look like? I also agree with you, Joe, that because we just saw the presentation and the community just saw the presentation, that we table the vote till the September 17th meeting. With this in mind, if we choose a format that our community does not support, no matter how opportunistic we see it, by voting down our budget, it will take longer. So if the community chooses to vote down a budget because they oppose a format, we will be taking longer on our budget. Those are my 3 points. Thank you.
Okay. There was somebody way in the back, wasn't there? Okay. Then the next one actually was Beth, and then you in the middle there, and then somebody over here. Oh yeah, you, and then I had one over here. I got them everywhere. You had your hand up too? I'm sorry, I missed you. All right, hi, Beth.
I guess I'm just going to agree with Ms. Van Pamela. It seems like it's pretty quick. If you had the option of planning it out for a whole year and working all these little kinks out rather than rushing to get it in the next school year.
But
It
the
just seems.
next school year is not.
I know, yes,
It's
I
a
know.
year, we have that year
I know,
to
but
do
it
that.
just
We just
seems-
have to make the decision
It just
for a
seems
budget.
rushed, like you don't have all.
Why so soon? I think she's trying to ask. Why does it need to be next school year?
Well, if we decide now, we can budget for it and we can spend that year planning for how it works. If we don't do it now, then this year this year runs the way it is, next year runs the way this year is, and it's really 3 years out till the change occurs. And this was one of the things that the board identified as something that was relatively easy to do, that had a lot of benefit for students. This impacts a bunch of students, it gives them some really tangible benefits, and logistically, like, it's not closing a school, it's not plan A and B where we were changing campuses into things. It's taking 40 kids and moving them on buses that already run and changing that little thing. So in the grand scheme of all the changes that the board had considered, it was a smaller change that derived a bunch of benefit for the students. And there were only 3 of those things that we were discussing that we would implement for the first year that we operated, and then this was one of those 3 that we had agreed to discuss. So, and that gives us that whole year then to implement the choice policy, how 6th grade would look if it came to the true middle school, and lastly, how we address the early ed, the early ed question, because not every elementary school offers the same early ed opportunities for our students. In the middle there.
Chris Drew, I'm kind of following on the same theme, and my question is, why do this now? Can you do a no vote with the idea of moving this forward another year, and then get more information as far as, transitioning this? And then number 2, are you doing it because you're cost saving? Is it because of that, or it's really more for the kids?
There is no cost savings. We're going to increase 2 FTEs to do the plan that they asked. It's not about cost at all. It's all driven by the student. All of our, as much as we possibly can, every board member, I think, puts the students first in the decision making. This is all about opportunities for children.
Well,
One sec. Was it Cliff next, and then Christina? Yep, Cliff, Christina, and then Mike I know, and Howie I know. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Cliff.
Cliff Passano, Townsend. Well, I'm going to parrot a lot of the sentiment that's already been said, but personally, I like to make decisions based on data and sound research, and I don't see that. I'm sorry. We keep talking about benefits for the kids, but there's nothing that really proves it. There's hypotheticals, there's maybe, hopefully, yeah, we like this scenario, but there's nothing that says, hey, when we move 6th graders in with 7th and 8th graders, this is gonna happen, it's gonna be great. We hope it is, but I researched it as best I could, Googling, what are the effects of moving a 6th grader in with 7th and 8th graders into a middle school environment? And I couldn't find anything positive. In fact, the study that I shared on the website and shared with Al and Mike and others was very negative about the effects, both from an academic and behavioral standpoint, citing an 80% increase in behavior problems that didn't just last during the transition period, but continued through high school. And I just feel that this whole thing is being rushed. It's too quick. I mean, you were going to present this tonight and then vote on it. Why? There's no cost benefit. There's lots of maybes. We don't know exactly how it's going to look. We don't know exactly how our kids are going to react to it. Why can't we flesh out the details a lot more before we ever even consider the vote? And the other thing is, I don't want to forget what I was writing down. The state is still not done assigning schools to SUs. We don't even know if we're going to have other schools in our district that we got to deal with. And that's not going to be taken into account until, what, November 30th, I think. So what if we end up with 2 or 3 more schools in our SU? Then how does this look?
We have the choice as to, the district as it exists now has the choice as to whether they take any new schools.
So how do we budget for that?
We don't.
So the state says we're assigning the SU, whoever, Winhall, or what do they have in here? They even had Vernon in here of all things. We can just say no?
That wasn't part of the statewide plan.
No,
That
that's
was an addendum sort of on the plan
Yeah.
for future.
If the state were to, the really likely one is Wyndham, if the state were to ask, the state requests that the district join ours, and our district has to vote. And that would be a vote of the entire district, not even the board, based on the legal advice we got. So if a district were to be, if the state were to request us to accept a district, we would then have to take that out to the public and hold a vote as to whether we would accept that district or not.
So if the state requires the school to move somewhere, and then the district they tell them they should move to says no, the state's just gonna say, okay.
Well, in terms of Wyndham, yes. In terms of other stuff, the state can move SU boundaries around, but they can't actually force anyone into our district.
Correct.
So
For now.
still, there's a lot of question marks here at pivotal time in the state's formation of these new SUs, and I think, why rush it? Why rush it when there's no savings? Why can't we just leave it alone for a year and see how it goes?
Thank you. I think Christina, you were next. And I got like this whole side of the board, through the back of the room. Oh, I'm sorry, you too. Go ahead.
Christina Wright, and I'm from Townsend. I'm a parent of a current middle schooler and a current fifth grader. So, and I also spent a lot of time in the middle school, so I have seen what the middle school looks like. I'm gonna say that my current middle schooler, I feel like gets way more activity in being in the middle school than she actually did in elementary school. I mean, my child had a Fitbit. She would spend at least 3 hours where she couldn't even get 250 steps in. There's also that discovery time. They're not stuck in a classroom during that discovery time. They get to choose where they want to go, or the teachers assign them to a place. And during that time, I know that there's lots of teachers that take them outside. They can choose to go to the gym. They can choose, if they need help in math, that's the time that they can get their extra help in, or they need help in English. All the teachers they can choose, or they can get assigned. Am I correct there? It's a great opportunity. They will have more chance for a language, which they currently don't get in elementary school at all. There's lots of opportunities that they are not getting in elementary school that they will get. I mean, I've seen both ends of it. So, thank you.
Thanks. I don't even know how many of you all had hands up. Howie does.
Sure, we can go. I'll
Just go
around.
down the room.
Go ahead. Howie, Ken, Mike, and then Drew, and then we'll go back out here.
Well, this is a great solution to a problem that, to my mind, just doesn't exist. I mean, I've been on the Leland Way board since 2001. Can't really ever say, and I've raised 3 kids and sent them here into the elementary schools here. I've never had a parent say to me, gee, I wish my 6th grader could be in middle school.
I did.
There are a few, but there they are. But other than you guys, I gotta say, not really. You know, my kids were not ready to be in middle school in 6th grade. But it's a great, the solution that was come up. Now, the question was asked, why is, the board saying that there's opportunities for the kids, there's benefits, but there's no costs are not being presented. We have a presentation here that says, oh, this is gonna be better, 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 but part of the presentation is not including what these kids are losing. A lot of parents are pointing that out. There's that emotional thing of being the big kid, and having a year to be the big kid in that little school and have, build your confidence before you go to middle school, before you have to resist a lot of temptations that we know these kids are going to be exposed to. As you said, this is an octagonal school. You're not going to separate these 6th graders from the rest of the school population. That's just maybe in classes, maybe in the hallway, but there's a lot of interaction that's going to be happening. So it's a great solution that you came up with. Again, if there's no cost savings and the benefits are not that great, that, especially since we're not seeing any costs, and as Cliff pointed out, where's the data? We're not the first people to do this. There's got to be. We're not the first, a lot of schools out there. There's got to be data. Where is it? So that's my piece on the 6th grade.
Bill, are these on the website?
Yes.
Okay. There actually is data on the website, and I don't think you got it, Howie, because it was in the summertime we got it.
July 25th meeting.
But there is some data that we actually got from the director of curriculum that talks about studies that do show benefits to moving the kids emotionally, educationally. And she also does a pretty good job of saying, there are studies that say it's good, there are studies that say it's bad, and really middle school is such a transitional time in students' development that it really comes down to what you believe. It's a philosophy, it's, getting them in with, getting them in with people who are committed to educating kids in that transitional time is key.
They are. They have sixth grade teachers that are committed to educating kids.
No, I'm not saying that they're not now, but I'm saying that, that middle school experience is something that is beneficial according to some of the research I've seen. But, there's research on both sides, definitely. But Ken?
Okay, so you were saying that there's no cost savings because they're gonna add 2 more positions up here, which is not true because there's 2.5 positions that won't be filled at the elementary schools. And depending on who you hire and how much you hire them for, which you won't know until they're hired, and you can't hire them until the board says, yes, we want this to go through, that you can't say that there's not cost savings or it's not going to be an increase in the budget. You can't say that. So by saying there's no cost savings, that's not accurate.
Well, if the new program is 2 FTEs and there are 2.5.
And what do you do with that
currently,
half? Because
it could be revenue neutral, but then it also could, if the 6th grade moved, it could open up early education opportunities elsewhere, and that could change things too. I mean, it's in flux. We do know, I think they've done, they haven't given us a budget number, but they've told us that to run this model is 2 FTEs, and that gives us enough that if we know we do this, that we know where we're starting with budgetarily.
and you know you're going to lose 2.5.
Right.
So you could say it's a wash, but you don't know. It could be a gain, it could be a loss.
Right.
So, and then what do you do with somebody who's teaching 5, 6, and now they're only teaching 5, or do they make it a 3, 4, 5? This has to be added into this conversation.
That would be a discussion with the building principal and the superintendent, I think, about
Oh, after
staffing.
we vote on it? That's not reality. It doesn't make sense to me. It's because you got the high school end covered. I got that. You got Leland and Gray covered. What's going to happen here? What's going to happen out there? I want to hear from the teachers, from the principals of the elementary schools.
Okay, we can.
How it's going to impact them. I think it would be very important for this board to hear.
We'll invite
how
them to
it's going
speak.
to impact their
We'll invite them to
communities.
speak to that. I got hands in the back and Mike is still waiting patiently. And then you in the front, I think, are next. Go ahead, Mike.
Actually, Cliff and Howie touched on a lot of what I was gonna say. At the end of the day, I've looked at a lot of research on this. I'm sure we all have, because we all take this seriously. And I see a lot more negative than I do positive on this, just from the studies I've looked at. And so then I come back to, if we're saying I don't think it's gonna save us money. And if we're saying that it's gonna improve education, I do see some benefits here. But I find myself asking, what concrete measurable objectives does it meet? Because to me, if we're, a budget is concrete, we know we're saving money or we're not. Test scores are concrete. They either go up, stay the same, or go down. That's the type of thing that I think we should be looking at. And then I haven't heard anybody really say how this will affect the special ed kids. Some of these kids are gonna spend a lot longer on a bus. That could have a lot more effect on our weaker populations in the schools. And that could drive other costs for additional supports or venture taxi or whatever, so.
You've been waiting very patiently. Thank you.
Jennifer Mahar from Townsend. I searched to find data to find out if this was the right thing to do. And I came upon a Duke University study that involved 6th graders moving into a middle school scenario. They studied over 44,000 students in 243 schools and 99 districts. Those students were 6th graders moving into the middle school setting. They found that this had a huge negative impact on those students, with twice as many incidents of discipline needed for those kids, including 4 times greater drug-related incidents. They also found the end-of-the-year test results in math and reading had a significant drop, These results remained through the 9th grade for those kids that were moved. And that's versus kids that stayed in the grade school setting.
When was that study? Do you know?
If you
Is it
Google it,
recent or?
if
Is
it,
it
you
recent?
Google it, it comes up.
You don't have the year?
I don't have the year.
Okay.
Can I ask for a clarifying question on that?
Sure.
Did that study clarify whether there was different results with a 7th grade transition? Or was it the fact that there was a transition? Did it
was the fact that
compare?
it was a 6th grade transition. They were comparing the 6th grade, they compared the 6th grade that moved to the middle school versus 6th grade that stayed in the grade school.
And did that 6th grade move in
That
7th
6th grade that stayed behind then moved on to the middle school in their 7th grade year, and their numbers did not jump.
Okay.
And that's very similar results to the study I referred to that was out of North Carolina.
The study is from 2007.
Do you know what size schools those were?
It was most of North Carolina.
Okay, I think those are the same studies. So wait a minute, hold on. I've lost track of all the hands. We've had a couple of invitations, and I'm going to extend it again to the elementary school principals that I know you're in the room. Please speak to what this is going to do to you. Speak to your, give us an opinion about this. What do you think of the transition? What do you?
Yeah, I think Craig Roach, principal of Townsend.
Thank you.
I think that before I answer any questions or give my opinion, because I've heard a lot of opinions tonight, if we could answer a direct question that you guys were really interested in, because we've heard a lot. We've been here for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So if we can answer something directly for you or give our opinion on something directly, we'd be happy to provide that for you. So if you guys want to formulate one or two, yeah.
Do the principals support moving 6th grade to the middle school?
I'm sorry.
Do you support moving the 6th grade in this fashion that's been presented to the middle school?
Do I support 6th grade?
That's correct. You wanted a direct question, eh?
And I'm just making sure.
Not you personally support necessarily, but educationally, do you support it? Does that give you some more coverage?
Sure. Educationally, I think that it provides the 6th graders with a lot of opportunities. Here's what we know. Right? Here's what we know about education. We know that there are clusters, and we talked about this in June. We probably talked about it in July, August. We know that there are common core clusters. 8 to 2, 3 to 5, 6 to 8. So educationally wise, it makes a lot of sense for the shift to come for a cluster for 6 to 8. And I can support that. Because educationally, common core clusters puts it that way, because they're learning the same way in those clusters. It makes a lot of sense for me.
So, thank you for speaking.
Sure.
Not to put you like on the hot seat or anything,
yeah.
but so Jessica Brooks, Newfane, Vermont. So, obviously my son Tucker goes to Townsend now, and we love it there. So on the flip side of that, so obviously educationally wise, there's no doubt that there's a lot of value, right? We all know that is it. So on the flip side, the emotionally side, like I know a lot of people talk about the recess, things like that. What do you think the effects will be on the 6th grade students? Obviously, a couple of people shared, their thoughts on, the dip emotionally and the lasting effects that they have on that. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. And then I would also like to hear from the other middle school principals.
So you're looking for an answer of how I feel about things like energy, playtime, social, emotional.
Yeah, well, I think that's the biggest concern.
And I
Other
hear
values,
that,
yeah.
and I do, and I understand. Just because you're right in front of me, I was listening very carefully to you. I was able to hear. So, I think that if we're going to address that, and we have, and I really commend Bob and his team and everybody up there, from listening from June to July to August to now, about those concerns, about how they're going to get that extra time in. So building in that gym time, or the health time, or having that extended block where the middle school teachers are actually able to go and bring their kids outside for that extra energy or social time. I think there's plenty of time built into the schedule. And if we think that that we need more, like if we come away with the conclusion tonight that we need more social interaction time or extra play time, I have confidence in Bob and Mike and Bill, the people who are trying to create this plan for us based on those concerns, that they'll try to get the most for you guys and making sure that the kids are getting all that they need. And that's just been continuing, that's what's been continuing to happen as the principals and myself, as we meet and give our feedback with Bob and his team, is that we hear and he's hearing what you guys have to say, and they're continuing to evolve that to make sure that your concerns are being heard. And if we're saying that playtime and social emotional growth is important, I'm confident they're going to try to find a way to do that. With the suggestion of, hey, could we just put it on the table that we're just going to get rid of health? Perfect. I mean, that's a solution. And that's a really easy a solution that we can make. And we can make adjustments.
Thank you. Terry, you have a question?
Terry, Townsend, Vermont. So I'm just trying to visualize, I have my son's in the 1st grade at Townsend. I have another son who will be entering pre-K next year. So how would shifting the 6th graders here affect the class structure at Townsend? Right now it's combined 1-2, combined 3-4, combined 5-6. Pre-K is separate and kindergarten is separate. So if the 6th graders came here, what could I anticipate the structure looking like at Townsend Elementary?
Great question, and unfortunately I don't have an answer for that. And I need to go back to, I think he's from Newbrook and Brookline. You know, we have to have an answer for it, but I think what we have to do is that we have to make a decision first. And then from there, we speak with our superintendent and say, how are we going to manage this shift? Right? So are we going to make now our 5-6 teacher a 4-5 teacher? How are we going to adjust these 2-time FTEs and at 2.5? But that's going to have to come with a decision. And I think a lot of people are looking for details right now. You know, Bob, I want more details. Mr. Antoine, I want more details about this. It feels rushed. You don't have the answers to the details. Well, I know that if we put those guys in front of us to put all the details together, they would have had those answers for them. But I think we have to make a decision first. And until there's a decision, I can't answer that question until I reach out back to my central office and say, now we have a decision, how are we going to make the shift happen, not only in my building,
Right.
but to the principals to the right of me. How do we shift our schools based on this decision? And I know that's not a really great answer, but we have to have an answer so that way we can meet and then come up with a really solid answer to address it.
What do the other principals think?
I'll just say Laura Hauser, principal at Jamaica Village School. Hello, everyone. We met prior to this meeting, met with Bob. He asked for our feedback, and we had a collaborative meeting and offered our opinions on both academic and social emotional. I've watched either all of these meetings or attended them, and I know that that's a concern of the community specific to the social and emotional needs of students. And we spent a lot of time talking about that, and Bob had some answers at the time and then went and met with his middle school team to get more answers about that. And I feel really confident in the plan that he's developed, building in specific time. He talks about the house time, the discovery time, making sure the students have that personal development time, which is a class this year, a new class this year that will continue in the future. And I know, Mike, your background is in middle school level education, so I do support the plan. I do think educationally it is a sound practice. All of the standards are 6-8. You know, there's the K2, 3-5, 6-8, 9-12, and it just makes sense academically for kids. And I do think that Bob and Mike and his team effectively addressed my concerns around the social and emotional needs, and many of those that I think the community had at the time as well. So.
Thank you. You want to turn?
I'm just going to interject. Okay.
I'm going to stand here.
All right. I did want to say for Jamaica, we are combined, so we are pre-KK 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6. If our 6th graders moved to Leland and Gray, it would open up space. We have very limited space. If you've ever been to our school, it is tight. But it would open up space for things that we've discussed in the past with the board, like perhaps a 3-year-old program. So right now we have 4-year-olds, and perhaps we could bring in our 3-year-olds in the town and take in tuition students as well for that program.
So I would like to just,
who are you?
My name is Scotty Chbotchnik. Thank you, Bill. My name is Scotty Chbotchnik. I'm school principal at Newbrook Elementary. Prior to working at Newbrook, which I love working at Newbrook, I worked at Kernhattan. And prior to that, I worked as the assistant principal at a 7-8 middle school in Brattleboro at Dams. I want to just talk about the opportunities, and I'm going to leave it at that. My own children go to Dummerston, where they don't get any foreign language. I would really love to be offering our kids at Newbrook foreign language, and we currently are not. That's always been something that's been in the back of my mind since I've worked at Newbrook, and I know it's also been on my board's mind. We're very like-minded, and I'm very lucky for that. I also, if you've been to Newbrook recently, you'll see we're a very full school. We've got 131 kids in the building right now, or 129, I'm sorry. And all the classrooms are full, and our SLPs are working out of literally a closet in our library. So the opportunity to have an extra room at Newbrook, you know, to me, I think about that, and I think, gosh, what could we do with that room? And there are lots of different things we could do with that room. I feel very confident in the team that I work with, not only in my building, which is an incredible team at my building, but also on the SU level. I feel like we are opportunistic people that really try to figure out the best thing for the kids, given any opportunity. And I feel like I will continue to be part of that team, trying to make this work if this is what the board chooses to do. I think that in order to get equity in amongst all the towns, the 4 towns, we're going to have to really have a close look at some of the things we do for the younger children, for pre-K. Newbrook has no public pre-K. You have a public full day, right? And you have full day. I mean, that's an issue, you know, in our town. And I just don't know how that would look and how we would get around that. And again, I mean, in my building, we don't have room for anything right now. We have 2 kindergartens this year. We projected 27 kids, and 20 showed up. So we do have 2 kindergartens right now. I know, just being human, that the status quo always feels really comfortable, and we get really used to it. And these are hard times when change is afoot. So I'm trying to spin positive the way I think I'm paid by the taxpayers to do, and to try to figure out how to make things the best of things. And I know I'm kind of sidestepping the questions a little bit, but I do recognize that this is really hard, and I really applaud you for the work you're doing. And I have utmost confidence that if I sent our current 5th graders to Leland and Gray next year, that I would feel good about that. I feel absolutely positive about that. Because
would you feel good about sending your own child to here?
You know, to flip that over, yes. To flip that over, though, I got to tell you, Tina, my children have to be in 8th grade at Dummerston. And I will say that on the other end of this whole spectrum of when you're ready is when you're way past ready. And and it's no joke. I mean, my son was in a class with 3 girls as a 14-year-old. I mean, I'm saying that in a public meeting.
On TV.
On TV. I'm cutting my cable tomorrow morning. But that is the other end of this, is that,
Yeah, I mean, either way, I think.
yes, and anything, any line is arbitrary to me. Any line is arbitrary. We're gonna teach the kids, we're gonna make them comfortable. You know, I think that there are really, I don't blame you for being divided. I'm really divided person.
Thank you very much. Okay.
So nobody answered what it was gonna do to their school community.
I think that Craig did a great job addressing that until once we make a decision on this, it'll make a decision on that. And they talked about expanding opportunities and changing things. But you can't, you need to make a decision first. Yes, ma'am.
I think something is.
So, I'm wondering if anybody's thinking sort of the same way I am as far as, I have a 7th grader who just entered 11th grade this year, and I think that if I were sending, I had trepidation. I didn't know the school, I didn't know the teachers, I still don't. But I'm wondering if there was a separate building, if there was a middle school building, that it was like, you go to, now after 6th grade, you go to this middle school building, and that's where you go. And that's what's been around, that's what people are used to, that's what people are used to seeing. If I would have felt less trepidation, and I think the answer is yes. And I hope that if we were to vote this in, because I'm still, I don't know, that you're trying to make the best scenario, make that building within a building, in a sense. If that would make people feel a little bit more, I don't know, safe is not the word, but feel a little bit more comfortable with this big change, which is a big change. I mean, I don't know if that kind of, in my mind, I'm trying to compartmentalize a little bit, like, well, this was just a different school. That's the natural progression of things. In my mind, because it's connected to the high school, I'm like, hold on, she's only 12, you know? So I'm hoping that you guys really thoughtfully planning out how this would exist. You know, that it will work moving forward, for lack of a better term.
Thanks. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, Bob. You wanted to say
It's interesting,
something?
you bring up an interesting question about that. The idea is like, would people feel differently about it if we had an existing 7-8 building that you're adding 6th grade to?
Right.
Is the trepidation about making the move from 5th to 6th, or is the trepidation about moving kids where there's high school kids?
And in my mind, it's moving potentially 10th graders in with 17-year-olds.
Right.
You know, because that was my trepidation. Just even, this was a natural move for us, but I was still like,
Yeah. It's just an interesting way, it's just a great way of thinking about it, I think, because then you start to separate what the challenges are that you're actually kind of ruminating around.
Right.
And because we know the opportunities are there, no one's arguing about the opportunities, it's all about what are the possible downsides. But, interesting, and there's, I saw the numbers, I didn't print it out before I came down, but the VAMLE website, VAMLE is the Vermont Association of Middle Level Educators, has some data, not recent, it's probably about 10 years old, of where middle school students are educated, in like how many of them are in a K-6 versus a K-8 versus a 5-8 or a 6-8, or, you know, I mean, like all the different configurations, or K-12s.
Right.
And it's all over the place in Vermont. It really is all over the place, and it is that arbitrary line, if you will, of where that division happens to be. I think when I was working in Springfield, there was a separate middle school, which was 6, 7, 8. I mean, the town I grew up in had a separate middle school, which was 6, 7, 8. And nobody ever thought, like, that's weird that 6th graders are there. Like, it just wasn't something that people thought about.
Yeah.
That was just the way it was.
and my personal experience was K through 8, 9 through 12.
Right.
My husband was K through 5th, middle school, high school, and I was like, you're weird. Just go to school. Like, what are you doing?
Well, you're correct that he is weird.
Yeah.
It is weird. In the back.
Fiona Chevalier from Newfane. So I have worked as an educator in K through 8 schools, 7 through 12, 6 through 12 with separate middle schools. And so how we educate our kids in best practice is 6 through 8. How we educate our kids is one thing. How our community feels about it is just as important. And while if we make a decision, if the board makes a decision today or next month, or if we wait a year, it doesn't matter in the long term if we wait an extra year or not. change is difficult, but buy-in is super important. If we have sixth graders going to the middle school next fall with parents that have high anxiety, the kids are gonna have more anxiety and it's not gonna be as successful. It seems like middle school, there's been some changes in the way the middle school is run right now in Leland Gray. Why not wait a year or two so they iron out those kinks? So then they're more confident in their middle school model to add more. Then we can do the research over this next year or the 6 months. And it's not that I'm wanting to postpone change. I'm wanting to make sure that our community feels confident. Our whole district is doing something where we're focusing on trauma-informed practice. If our kids come in with more trauma because their communities are anxious about it, we're not going to be as successful. So I think timing is super important, and we need to be thinking about that when we go forward. Personally, I think 6 through 8 makes a lot of sense. It's the way I was educated, so that's maybe my default. I've seen it work very successfully in a middle school, high school model, and I've also seen it work horribly in a middle school, high school model. So I think we really need, yes, we need the big picture and be confident about the big picture and make a decision, but we also need to be very cognizant of how our community can buy it. And this will be the first big decision that's made by this board. This is the first big change. And I want the first big change to be super successful. Because I want, whether you decide yes or no, I want the first thing our district does to go forward with a great first step. So I want folks to think about that when they're making this decision.
Thank you. Beth?
I just want to make a comment. I have 4 kids that went through here. 2 have graduated, 2 are in high school. And when I ask my 2 that are in high school right now, do you ever see this middle schooler or that middle schooler? They say no. My other 2 that are out of here, when my son, who's in 10th grade, was in 7th grade, used to see his high school sister all the time. So there is a change. It seems like it's better.
I'll keep it going. As I, too, have had 3 children go through school, 2 have graduated, and 1 is currently an 8th grader. And when I went to the first meeting where when Bill presented the plan and whatnot, and I went home and my husband and I were talking about it, my son was sitting there, and he went, "I would have loved that." And that shocked me. It really did. And then I really got thinking about it, and we talk about the maturity levels and whatnot. Well, whether it's 6th grade coming in or 7th grade, there's always kids who are mature enough to handle it, and there's kids who are not mature enough to handle it. He definitely was a kid who would have been able to handle it. You know, his other point was, and again, I was like, oh yeah, and I can remember your brother's going through that. They've been with the same kids. When we talk about emotional and social, they've been with the same kids since kindergarten. And that's one of the biggest things my son said was, I could have been friends with the friends I have now. Because, you know, many people, I'm sure, I'm not the only one here, who your kids maybe didn't have a lot of friends in school. You know, what my best friend said to me, that probably would have been great for my son because he would have had a friend. Because he went through grade school never having a friend. So I think bringing them here earlier for a lot of these kids really can socially be huge for them. I think another part, as I see here, a lot of people here are first timers. For someone like me who's been through it, Leland and Gray is not the big scary place. You know, and I think a lot of first timers, because if you had proposed this, when my first son came here, I would have been like, oh, no way. I would have been right here with everybody else fighting it. Child number 3, I'm like, this is a great opportunity. But, and I think the other thing that has come up too is everybody other than 3, 4 of you have sat on the Leland Gray board. A lot of you have just been an elementary school board. So to me, as the middle school, whether you change or not, it's not going to affect my child. He'll be going into 9th grade. But you are still my Leland and Gray board. So to me, I think it's important that we make decisions based on what's going to happen with Leland and Gray. Because as much as nobody wants to put their 6th grader on a bus to Leland and Gray, certainly nobody wants to see Leland and Gray close and have to put their 7th grader on a bus to Brattleboro or Green Mountain or something like that. So the longevity of Leland and Gray is very important to me too. So that's just my opinion, and it's the opinion of a current 8th grader. He thinks it would be a great experience.
Thank you. Yes.
Terry from Townsend.
You're next.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're after Terry. I just saw you.
I just wanted, I've been thinking about, Mike, your question about, just wondering, if it's not the money, if it's not this, like, what is the premise? I can't remember how you worded it exactly, but you said, if we're not doing it for the money, and we're not doing it for this, we're not doing it for that, so I don't.
Concrete, measurable objectives.
Thank you, concrete, measurable objectives. So that's the thing that, like, that sentence just sort of has me thinking. I thankfully don't have skin in the game yet, because I only have younger kids, but, and I totally see the benefits on both sides, but I was curious about the concrete, measurable objectives. And like, what are they?
Well, what I was, in the context I said it in is like, budgets are concrete and measurable, and so are test scores, right? So, there's the intangible of like the, better program potentially or whatever, but then there's the tangible, which is, a lot of studies I looked at said it doesn't, generally speaking, consolidation doesn't save money and doesn't improve test scores. And if you look at Maine, which is a really good comparison to Vermont, because it's very rural and geographically isolated, they forced consolidation back in 2008 on a state level. And one article I read said by 2016, 42% of Maine's districts were trying to reverse their mergers because they didn't save money and test scores showed minimal change. So that's concerning to me. And that's the type of details that I think we really need to really flush out if we're going to consider doing this. If like somebody said over there, if we're going to do it, we all want it to be successful, But I think there's a lot of evidence that says that we might not get what we think we're going to get. So that's why I would, that's why I think we should proceed cautiously.
Just to clarify, the Maine forced consolidation was much different than ours. First of all, ours isn't forced. This was a voted merger by the public. And second of all, Maine's consolidation was close the schools and combine. And we're not talking about closing schools. It was much larger.
But actually,
to use your analogy, the main thing would be close everybody and put them in one building, because that's how the kids are going to work.
I hear that, but Act 46 threatened the small schools by taking away their small schools grant, and it's designed to put the small schools.
It's not the same thing. So we've actually got a hand in the back of the room there, right?
Are you actually voting on this tonight?
No.
I don't know. We don't have a motion yet.
I make a motion, we table this till next meeting.
Second.
On it right now, if you table it,
That's fine.
then it shuts it down.
No, wait, stop.
If you move to table
Be
this,
careful.
it shuts this meeting down, just so you know what you're doing.
Because it means they can't.
Yep, they can't speak.
That would cut off discussion on this if we voted to table this, it would end discussion on this question at all.
I think I got a lot to think, I think I have a lot to think.
Right, it would end discussion for tonight. No more by the board, no more from the public, no more discussion of this issue at all. We would move on to the next thing in the agenda.
You could table the vote. You can still have discussion because we do not have a motion on the table. There's nothing to vote on, so he could ask the agenda to be moved so that the vote be held at the next meeting and this continued discussion
True, but
can proceed.
that's not the motion, that's not what he said, so.
I'm just trying to clarify Robert's rules so that everyone's clear that we could still talk because we don't have a motion. And the vote could be moved to the next
He
meeting.
made a motion to table this, and before it was seconded, I was clarifying the point of Robert's rules there. So, Ken, you,
No, I don't want to amend it.
Okay, so there's a motion to
It's
table-
almost 9 o'clock now, we've been on this for a while, and I thought we're going to hear the same things over and over again.
Okay,
I'm not
so-
hearing anything new.
So there's a motion to table this. Is there a second to the next meeting?
I seconded it.
Mike seconded it. All right. That's not a debatable motion. All in favor of tabling this discussion until the September 17th meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Hands.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gotta go hands.
About why
Just want to make sure people are known.
Okay, I'm not even sure which, we're gonna, there were 2 yes?
3, but that's okay, go ahead.
Okay.
We'll continue, we'll continue.
Okay,
I
so
made
the
motion,
so
it
the
failed.
motion fails. We
Let's
can
keep going.
continue discussing the 6th grade move. Yes?
Yes.
Did you want to make a comment before you left? We're continuing the discussion.
No.
Okay. Yes, sir.
My name's Craig Arnold. I'm from Newfane. One question, I think this is a new point. All the research that I looked at was comparing 6th graders who moved up to just a middle school, not a middle school within the context of a grade school with a high school. So I am wondering if there is any research out there that you know of that includes that, because that's where I think where a lot of the concerns come in, obviously listening to the community. So is there any data out there that you're aware of? Would speak to that?
Well, just so I want to be clear with folks, I wasn't tasked to provide research, I was tasked to create a plan. So I want to make sure.
Are you aware of anything?
So I'm going to defer to Bill on
That's
this
from our
one.
director of curriculum. She did that stuff
the
on
research.
site.
Right.
That's where it's in that.
If she found something of that, it would be there.
Okay. We can look
So
and
on
see.
the westrivered.org site, our director of curriculum did all the initial research, so if she found something that fit that context, it would be found there.
Yeah, we looked at all the research posted, didn't see it, that's why.
Vermont's very unique, so I don't know if there was a particular study that, went to that.
Thanks. Oh, sorry, Rick. You blended in there.
Yeah, Rick Hagee from Townsend, and just as a point of note, and I believe it was referenced to back here, but she never really got an answer. When you're talking about studies and wanting data, you have to figure out the size of the schools you're getting your data on. So if you're talking about moving your children into a school of 2,000 kids, it's going to be a whole lot different from moving your kids into a school of 200 to 300. So if you go out there and find all this negative data that says these kids are scarred for life by moving into middle school in 6th grade, look and see how many thousands of kids were in one bunch. Because what you've got here is a situation where you can work with small. So in my view, this situation is much better for doing this kind of shift than it would be in the schools that I went to, where you were pushing 1,500 kids. A 6th grader walking into a class, in a building with 1,500 kids in it, that's a little different from walking into one with 300. Okay, so don't rely on the studies unless you really dig into the data.
Thank you, Rick.
So, quite a few comments on why are we having this discussion now? And I'll tell you why I think we should be having this discussion now and why I think this board needs to make this decision now. We've heard from our principals, we've heard from our academic leaders, we've heard from our director of curriculum. We've all agreed that there are educational benefits for children. So by taking all of that information that we know, that there are academic benefits for children, we know that we can address, we've heard from our principals that we can address and that the middle school can come up with plans to deal with the social and emotional questions that we have. If we push this vote out, if we push this change out 2 years, then we are denying those educational benefits to an entire group of students. The reason why we have to have this discussion is because we owe it to our students to do what is best for their educational environment now. It's not our responsibility to push off the difficult discussions, the difficult decisions for 2 years because we're uncomfortable making those decisions. I completely agree with the public that we need to engage parents. I completely agree with the public that we have education to do. If we decide to move forward with this because it's what's best for our kids, we're gonna put together a budget. During that budget, we are gonna get a lot of granular detail as to how that's going to work because we have to put numbers to it. And we're gonna work on all of those items over a 3 or a 4 month period. The public can come to those meetings. I'm certain this board will engage in direct public input and feedback and discussion so that it won't be like a surprise to 5th grade parents next year that their kids are going to the Leland and Gray Middle School versus their own elementary schools. There's a lot of time between now and when this proposal would go into effect. Almost exactly a year. We're not suggesting that, this is a, very fast, just popped up yesterday and we're gonna make a decision on it today. This is part of a study that's been going on in this district, somebody help me, 10 years?
Yeah, probably.
So this is not something we came to yesterday. This is something we came to through public meetings, through discussions, through recommendations from our Act 46 committees that were out doing public research. It came from recommendations from our curriculum. It comes with support from our principals. It comes with support from our educational leaders. And we have to, I believe, as a board, take all of this data and do what we were elected to do, which is make the difficult decisions to better the educational environment for our kids. That's what we're here to do. Pushing this vote out another year doesn't solve the problem. It means work for us. We vote yes, whether we vote yes tonight, whether we vote yes next week, whether we vote yes in October, means that we have to engage the public in a discussion about what does this mean. It means you have to engage in a discussion with our administration as to what we need them to build. And if what we're hearing from the public is we need more unstructured playtime, then we simply take that to our administration that that's important. We spent hours working on values. And Lindsay was very clear as to the values we have for our students. And I believe they're hanging on the wall behind us. And if you look, we have values in enrichment and additional learning opportunities. We have values, I'm looking for yours, Lindsay, where is it? It's in here, I know it is.
You're killing me, Drew.
Where'd it go?
Apparently it wasn't that important.
It was too.
Outdoor recreation.
Outdoor recreation space.
There it is.
I know it's there somewhere. We have values. We decided as a board that this is what we want for our kids. Let's not push the vote out. Let's not push the discussion out for 2 years because we're scared to make it. That's what my suggestion is. We continue to move forward. Whether we have a vote tonight or a vote next week, we need to move forward.
Thank you. Mike? Oh, I'm sorry.
I think the public, I just want to kind of, I'm new, right? So give me a little bit of latitude. But, the public has real concerns. I went through and I counted up the positive and negative comments from the things on the website. It was 10-1 against, right? So I think whatever this board does, we want to have public support. We want to show the public we're making intelligent decisions with data. Like right now, we don't even have any financial data. So I don't see how we could make this, this tonight. But to talk to what Drew said about studying it for 10 years, I went back and I read the whole study committee report, and it was a very good report, and I commend everybody who served on that, but it didn't say anything about, moving 6th grade or, K through 2, or that wasn't in the report. So, I think we really need to look at this and proceed cautiously. That's it.
Bob, and then
I just want to respond a little bit to what Drew said as well. Mike and I were talking earlier tonight about, what happens, what's the next step? If the board approves it, like, what do we do next? And if the board turns it down, then what do we do next? And obviously, if it's the latter, it's business as usual. But the one of the things that we talked about in Mike's suggestion was that we would develop like what we call a transition advisory panel, which would include community input, to spend some time over the next 6 to 8 months to really think about what that input is and how we can take feedback and make alterations to the plan. And the plan that we put forward is a skeleton, right? I mean, there's not a lot of meat on the bone. I mean, there's some meat on the bones, and there's some detail in certain places, but there's gaps, and given what we have for time to put it together. But yeah, that would be our plan, is to put together a advisory panel to talk about the transition, whether it's just the 5th grade parents that we're engaging, or whether it's a broader group. I don't know, but I think that's something that we talked about doing.
Yeah. Thanks. You were next.
Danielle West from Jamaica. So my daughter's in 1st grade, so this wouldn't obviously affect her right away. But I know the anxiety level that she has right now about what her future is, about everything that's on the table. And I can't imagine what our 5th graders must feel like, and I haven't heard any conversation about that. I come from a system that has a middle school, so I have no fear that of her going into a middle school environment at 6th grade. But I have concern over our current 5th graders getting their plans for next year yanked out from under them. I'd like to see a vote go through so we know what's going to happen, but have a transition period so our 4th graders now know next year is 5th grade, that's their last year at their elementary school, and then they're going to come here for 6th grade. Let's not yank the rug right out from under them for what their plans are. I mean, these kids are at a very vulnerable stage. Like I said, my 1st grader has great fears already, and we only talk positive about this in front of her, so I can't imagine what the 5th graders feel like.
Thank you. Alicia, then Howie.
So, Bill, I'm just gonna direct it to you as a question. What would it look like? What would it do to us, since we just voted on school choice, if we had one choice of an elementary school that held the 6th grade position and the choice for the high school position?
What would what look like?
So if we offered the school the opportunity for 6th grade at the high school, but we also maintained a 6th grade in the elementary schools, because we just voted on school choice, students that may not be ready to take the step developmentally into the high school could choose to stay in an elementary school.
So there would be I would ask the board an enormous amount of questions.
Just curious.
A is, why would we do that? B, if we did that, would it be equitable? C, what does the population look like in our pre-K through 12 system? What does our staffing look like in our pre-K through 12 system? What do our offerings look like in the high school? How many students do we have traveling between 8th and 9th grade? I would need, because this is the first time we're going to be looking at this as a system. And so, I mean, it kind of goes back to Mike's initial point that if the design of this decision is to have 2 additional content specialists for the 6th, 7th, and 8th, and marching off of what Ken said, I don't know what that looks like in the end. I don't know if that is a savings. I don't know if that is a neutral. I don't know if that is if it costs more, because we're going to be building around a $10 million budget. And we're going to be looking at serving 600 students over 5 towns for the very first time. So as decisions are made, they'll have ripple effects through other decisions. So I could not give you a honest answer on that very specific thing that without other decisions being made as well.
I appreciate you being willing to field that question.
Absolutely.
Howie, you had a question, comment,
Yeah, I have a
something?
question. When this board was formed, and the towns voted for it, there was a big deal made about advisory committees from each town, parent advisory committees at each school in each town. I'm curious as to what happened to that and why we're not hearing a report from these advisory committees cluing us into what the parents of the fifth graders want who haven't shown up tonight.
Well, first of all, we're not operational. And second of all, the advisory committees, as sort of the way they were envisioned, was that was a building-driven decision. So each building would then form its own advisory committee with a board member from that town. The committees were not our responsibility to form. They were the individual buildings' responsibility to form and configure the way they liked, with a board member from this board sitting on that advisory committee to act as a liaison. And they just haven't been put together yet.
Well, don't you think that maybe you ought to put that together before we make big changes in our systems?
I think you just said it's not our responsibility.
It's not our responsibility to put them together. It's a building.
Oh, but we're all in this together.
And we've got all three building principals in the room to give us feedback, and a whole bunch of parents. Our advisory committees were here. So.
It has been a topic at our board meetings.
And now Craig wants to answer that question.
Sure. Yeah, the talk at leadership around principal advisory or student advisory, that's something that we have talked about last year. This year at Townsend, we're about to start that model. And that's still a year early. I went to Bill last year and asked him about that based on the discussions you guys were having here. And it is something that is going to be put into place in all schools next year.
Well, we're talking about something, I'm talking about the part of this merger agreement, it was placed on the table that each school have advisory committees of parents. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm still talking, we're talking the same thing.
Community members?
We are.
Yep. And so myself, I know Townsend is, and I know we've had other interest from the other principals who are interested in piloting it a year early. Maybe not from the representatives here. That's gonna start this year, because we know that by next year it's something that we do need and we want, because we are meeting like this. So we should have representation of parents.
How do parents join the advisory committee?
It is about to come out, Ms. Pelosi. Yeah, no problem. So for instance, that'll be coming out on Facebook, Thursday letters, and we have all the paperwork and the framework already laid out. We're just waiting to enroll it. It's a busy time of year, day 8. So we're just giving a little bit of time for kids to come on in, parents to come on in, get ready for the school, and then we're going to initiate a lot of things coming up soon, especially in Townsend in October. So it's on our radar, I guess is what I'm saying, is that we're aware of it and we're preparing for it, some a year early, but definitely by next year.
Thanks. Yes, sir.
David, Kenneth Oak, Jamaica. Will the students have breakfast available before class?
They do now. I assume that practice would continue. Yes.
Yeah, students, actually, the middle school and the high school both have the opportunity to get breakfast before the bell at 7:50, and both middle and high school have a short break time where we have a snack cart that brings food from the kitchen up to A level for the middle school and to B level here for the high school during that snack time. So they actually have 2 opportunities to have some breakfast prior to lunch.
Yes, sir.
Could you address what you meant by the board's not fully operational?
We don't actually govern the school district until July 1st, 2019. The reason we're working now is to get ready to do that, and one of the things we have to do to get ready to do that is to prepare the budget this fall that everybody votes on in the spring, because that'll be the first budget we actually operate under. But right now, each school is still run by its individual board, the Leland and Gray board, the Jamaica board, the Newfane and Brookline board, and the joint contract board. Those all still exist and still run their schools until July 1, 2019.
Is there any other advisory boards that will be joining at that time, aside from the parent advisory board?
Well, those advisory boards are not just for parents. they're open to any community member, they're open to the staff, they're open to the students.
Yeah, they're actually they're called building advisory committees, I think is what we actually called them in the articles. Emily's fiercely trying to find the definite, but it was envisioned to be parents, teachers, you know, building principal, board member from this board, and, you know, it was primarily to deal with the sort of cultural issue. You know, each school has its individual culture, and, you know, we didn't want to make everything the same. We want equity, but it doesn't mean that it has to be absolutely lockstep the same in every school. And those things allowed, because we're now looking at a much larger piece, it gave us a little more direct contact with that once we were operating.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I'll say my name this time because I think I forgot last time. Deidre Beatty from Townsend. I think it's really important that you do make a decision tonight. I'm a para, I work in the school. I hear the kids. We talk about emotional damage. Right now these kids are stressed because they don't know. The fifth graders, I have family members that this is going to affect, and he doesn't know. He's like, am I going to graduate this year? Am I not going to graduate this year? You know, am I going to go on a trip? Am I not going to go on a trip? So I think for our families and for these kids, we need to make a decision. We need to move forward. And for our teachers and for our schools, because, you know, the same thing. Are the sixth grade teachers, are they going to include the fifth grade into the sixth grade trip? Are we going to do, you know, these decisions need to be made. They're fundraising already. You know, they need to move forth. And waiting another week, another month, another 2 months, it just prolongs it. And so I think the families and the staff need answers and know this is what's happening, and okay, now we move forward. So.
The parent advisory board that you're talking about, would that advisory board be making any decisions, or do they just give their advice or their opinion again to another board, and then that board decides? Because I feel like now we've had a lot of parent meetings, we've had a lot of parent conversations with the board, and I personally feel like the board has already made up its mind, and it's just a matter of time, so let's just get the decision over. I don't necessarily feel, and I'm not trying to be whatever about it, but I feel like a lot of the boards have just already made up their mind, and no matter what anybody says in this group, it's not going to weigh in. It doesn't make a difference. And I mean, my child is the first class, so I have kids that have graduated from Leland and Gray, and I've done that, I've been that parent. But this is my child. He talks about it almost every day. What's going to happen to my sports? What's going to happen to the trip? I don't want to go there. It's too big. I mean, he is very upset about it and scared about it. And I feel like no matter how many times we talk about it or how much things get said, that the people the parents that have the kids in there right now this year, that's big for them. The other parents we're the guinea pigs. I'm sorry, but we are. We are the guinea pig class. And actually the first two, and I just happened to be lucky and have kids going to the first two classes. So I just think that parents should have some input, and the board is supposed to represent all of the parents and take in all of our comments and considerations, and not be dead set about, well, this is what's better academically. Academics are great, but if kids are behind academically, they can catch up. There is a time frame they can catch up. If they're behind socially and emotionally, sometimes those kids never catch up. And there's more to things than just academics. I love academics, they're important, don't misunderstand that. But there's a lot of other things that are equally as important. And I feel like we're just kind of talking, and we can talk about this all day, but a good portion of you have already made up your minds.
To answer your question about the advisory committee, building advisory committee, they're an advisory committee. They don't, this board is the board that votes and makes the decisions.
So it's always the board that makes the decision regardless of what anybody says?
Yes.
That's my question.
Yes.
So the only way to change that is to change people to vote, that's how that board changes? Or that's how the system
Yes.
changes?
Roll them out.
Yes.
4 seats up in March.
Okay.
Yeah.
You guys vote on the budget? No.
I'm sorry?
The budget will be brought to a public vote.
if the budget fails, then obviously the board knows it's doing a bad job, and if, the board members are elected, and if there are new board members elected, then they would obviously, they could do something different.
I mean, that's just my feeling. I'm not trying to be, I appreciate all the work you've done. I think you've done some great work, and I think you've answered some great questions, and I'm not by any means dismissing that. But I really feel like a lot of what the parents are feeling, and it's just, I just have a feeling that you've already made up your mind. That's why we just need to vote, because we just need to tear the Band-Aid off. That's how I'm feeling.
Mike?
I'm gonna go back to, again, I'm new at this, but normally, I guess my sense of it is like, so let me ask some of the people who've been on boards for a long time, because there is a lot of public sentiment against this, so that budget could possibly get voted down. To me, it kind of feels like the people on this board that want to do it are gonna be daring the public to vote down the budget. That's just how it feels to me. But is that how it's normally done? Because I would think that normally you want to go out with a budget that you really want the public to pass and that you think has the highest likelihood of passing. And I think we're off in the gray area with this, and we'll have to see what happens.
Go ahead, Howie.
Yeah, I'm just going to second that. I mean, Drew, I realize you've been thinking about this for 10 years or so, but as Mike pointed out, the comments are running 10-1 against this on the website. So somehow the benefits of this have not been communicated to the public adequately. The only convincing data I've heard presented tonight was that Duke study, which shows overwhelming negative impact. Even though it might be larger schools, it's also a rural state. I haven't seen the positive data from anybody, except to say it's somewhere on the website. So I mean, we got to look at passing this budget, as was pointed out. It's great to bring this to the kids a year sooner, if it's great, but however, if it's not great, you're bringing something bad to the kids a year sooner. And we as a board have to look to the community. Our job is to answer to the community and present a budget that people are going to support. If the community support is consistent with what we've seen on the website, this plan is going to doom this budget. So I just want to throw that out before the vote comes up.
Yes. Okay, I'll get you right after. One sec. Go ahead.
What can we do, since we just got the kind of some of the details that everyone has been hungry for tonight, what can we do to pass that around within is a week's time period enough to pass around those details so the community has a chance to think about those things, and that their opinions may change knowing more details and more facts?
Okay, one second. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Beth from Jamaica. I just hear a lot of talk about naysayers on the website, and I think you're going to get a lot of that, more so than you're going to get people who are supporting it. A lot of the questions that are on the floor are people who are opposed and are trying to figure out and navigate their way through this. But I think I speak heavily in favor of, as do many other people that are here tonight, are in support of the plan and are in support of the people who are behind the scenes making this happen. And I think that we all need to realize we're all here to do what's best for our kids, and we need to put our trust in the educational system. Another point that I want to make is that there's a lot of people pulling data from Google, which I think is great that you're trying to get all this research and everything. However, a lot of those I'm hearing like 2007, 2008, we need to remember that the Common Core is really like a driving force in all of this. And I just want to echo what the principals were saying about the Common Core being 6, 7, 8, and K to 2, might be wrong now, K to 2. Yeah? Thanks, Craig. And I think that that's really important that we look at the structure that's put down for us to use as educators, or for the educators to use. and really look at that and say, okay, this makes sense. This is the model that we're given to use for our students. So I think we really need to put some trust into, this model that's been put on us from the state, saying this is the Common Core, this is what you guys are going to use, and then to look at Bob and his team and this board and look at what they're gonna do with that model. They're gonna give us a 6 to 8 model, a 6 to 8 educational program for our kids, which makes sense because it matches the model that's given from the state. It matches Common Core. So we're really trying to go off of what has been given to us as the model, Common Core. So when we're looking at this data from 2007 and 2005 and from Colorado and wherever else, and North Carolina, and we really need to think about A, our community, and B, what's been given to us as that model educationally. And continue to look at the equity, the opportunities for equity, because I think a lot of people are losing sight of that too. I understand the developmental piece. I understand those of you who it hits close to home because you have a 5th grader that's younger. I have a 6th grader right now who's 12. She's the oldest in her class, and I would love to see her in the 6 to 8 model. I would absolutely love it. I look at her, not just academically, but I look at her playing soccer, and I look at her playing basketball or softball. She is going to be competing with 4th, 5th, and 6th grade kids. She's not going to get the opportunity to compete at a higher level, where yes, my daughter needs to compete at a higher level. She's going to be stuck competing at a lower level. Her skills are not going to get, challenged as much as they should. And that's just my opinion from what I've been hearing all night. So I support the vote tonight.
Thanks.
Jessica Brooks, New Fane, Vermont. Drew, you touched on it. Like you guys we've been going round and round on this for a long time now. And Deidre, you made some really good points. Tina, you did as well. A lot of people did tonight. I feel like there's nothing else that anyone else is going to bring to the table at this point that would change anybody else's mind. So I would appreciate if you voted on it, and so we can move on confidently, start preparing our kids for this, start preparing our teachers for this. Bob, I really appreciate the plan that you guys put together. It sounds like you did quite a bit of work in addition to getting your own students prepared for the new school year. So I thank you for that. But I would like to move on, and then I would also like, I think that it would be very beneficial if it did get approved for us to, and I forget the term, like the middle school board for that.
The NELMS.
Thank you.
Assessment.
Yeah. Obviously, it would be hugely beneficial to us if this did get approved for us to bring them in, no matter what the cost is. So, thank you for that. But yeah, I would like to move on with this.
Thanks. Yes, sir. Is that a
Sure,
hand?
I got
No,
it.
wait, I'm asking you if that's a hand. This
Yeah,
guy's
this
got
is
the
a hand.
floor. Okay, you have the floor, then you have the floor. Oh,
I agree. It doesn't seem like there's any new information, and you got a lot of input from the community, and after listening to the board and to the committee that developed the plan, my feeling is that they will make do. That the kids it'll be experimental for them, and the teachers will make do. The programs will make do, and it's if it's going to happen, they'll get put through it. And I don't see what waiting any longer would do.
Thanks. Drew? Sorry, you were next.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the model that's been, we asked the administration for, and move the 6th grade to the middle school for the
2019-2020.
thank you school year.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the Peninsula model, right?
What was that we call it?
For the 2019-2020 school year. Any discussion on that motion? Motion maker gets to speak first.
I'd like to point out something.
Motion
before we
maker,
go into
if
this.
Drew wants to speak first, he can.
Yep, but go ahead.
So, thank you, I appreciate the comments, and I do believe that we were elected to make tough decisions. I have read through every single comment, I have listened to every speaker all summer, all last fall. I've listened to our educational leaders, and I really do believe that this is the best thing we can do right now for our kids. I don't believe this is going to be the last thing that we're going to do as we look at our educational model. We're going to have a lengthy discussion about early education, I believe, coming up. I appreciate Newfane saying, hey, extra space may give us more opportunities for early education. I appreciate the principals saying that they completely support the high school administration to develop this program, and I think this is the right decision for us moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks. Ken?
Okay, just a couple of points of reference. First, I want to go into the history of this. I'm trying to figure this out now. Now, how long have we been talking about moving the 6th grade up here? For about 10 years?
Specifically, moving the 6th grade is mentioned in the Articles of Agreement.
It's part of the Articles of
As a
Agreement.
possible
So we're
opportunity.
saying 10 years.
But we've been studying
How long have we been doing
consolidation,
Common
med
Core?
merging.
How long have we been doing Common Core?
2014.
2014, so for 4 years.
2014 was the first year it was assessed. It was adopted in 2011 across the
The
country. I believe it was April of 2012 that the implementation rolled out across the state of Vermont. But 2011 is the birth, and 2014 was the measurement.
When did it come into play in this district?
2011-12 school year.
Okay. And we've been discussing since 3 years before then on moving the 6th graders up. So obviously, that says something to the effect of, it's not because of the Common Core. That's one point. As far as Newfane or Newbrook not having an elementary school, we have, or excuse me, not an elementary school, pre-K, we have pre-K providers. Okay, so I don't want anybody to think that there's no pre-K in Newfane and Brookline. There is. They all have choice to whatever provider they want to go to, just to make that clear. And I want everyone to seriously think that we're supposed to be doing a 21st century education here, which does not just deal with academics, but it deals with the whole child. The social issues, the psychological issues, and family components and breakdowns and everything else. There's a whole lot more into this than just, we're gonna have Spanish, okay? And I'm just throwing that out there. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thanks.
For now.
Alicia?
I know that the decision has to be made, and I appreciate everything that this board has done, and this wrestling and the lack of sleep, and the meetings at the grocery store, unexpected, or at soccer, or whatever it is. I would have to say, just so the board knows, from all of my feedback, from all of the people I've walked to in the community, except for 2 and a few new voices that I've heard tonight, in order to represent my community well, based on what they've told me up until this point, I don't feel I could vote this in. I would love to see, if they got their details that we had tonight, if there would be a change in the tide. I would also love to see that the kids aren't stressed out. And parent stress does lead to kid stress. So I know that we have to do those things. And as an old adage says, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. We need to make sure that if this is what's best for our children, we are saying it in a way that is presenting it to the quality of the work that has been done and to our community that is in a non-threatening way.
Lindsay?
So I've taken this very much to heart. I initially thought when we first heard of this, when that whole like super end of the world plan A thing came out, I said, well, you know, sixth grade, I guess maybe I could actually kind of see that as being like sixth grade in the middle school. Maybe I don't hate that one little tiny part of that plan. And I felt like right off the get-go that I saw a lot of positives. And then hearing from the community, I've heard a lot of negatives. I feel after so much discussion, everywhere I go, that a lot of the cons that people have are fear-based, and it's scary to change, and nobody wants their kid to be the one that has to figure it out, and I totally get that. I really feel like the administration and all of the educators that have talked, the principals, everybody that has been working on this, has done a really good job of addressing a lot of those concerns. You know, we hear from some of the last meeting, major concerns were like, well, what about sports? My kids, now my sixth grader's gonna be competing with all of these middle schoolers, and that seems crazy. But we're hearing, well, there are a lot of middle schoolers, they will be competing against other sixth graders. So I feel like we can sort of table that now. Like, I personally feel like I can table that now. That's not as big of an issue. It still may be scary to people, but we can table that. And then we say, okay, but they're not gonna get recess, and that's a huge thing. And I'm like, yes, recess! And then I'm like, well, okay, they're addressing that because they're giving them PE, half an hour PE every day. They're still gonna get to go outside or to the Dutton gym or whatever when they're, you know, at the end of their lunch break. They're still gonna get time within the class to move their body and have a little bit of choice. And I am confident that if we were to say, hey, what about like actual free choice time? Is this a thing? I'm confident because of the proposals that have come to us that they will be able to make that happen. And you know, the list kind of goes on and on. I think the only thing I feel that hasn't really been addressed and probably can't be addressed is the whole notion of somebody has to go first, right? There will be a class, and if we decide to do this for the next school year, that does leave the gap of what about a sixth grade trip? And that's really huge for a lot of people because kids have been looking forward to that since like kindergarten, right? And to not have that all of a sudden that's taking something huge away from people. I don't think that's unaddressable, whether that means there's somehow a trip for fifth grade now, or if there's a seventh grade trip, or a sixth grade trip in middle school, how that works out. Again, I'm confident that that can be addressed in a comfortable manner. And I really feel like every single thing that that's been brought up, all of these cons, really have been addressed. And I think it's still scary because change is always scary. But I do think that the way that it's been addressed, if everyone could just like take a deep breath and like really look at the facts of it and not the emotion of it, that I think the facts of it are that there's more pros than cons. And that's my 2 cents.
Just really quickly following up, because Lindsay did a great job of sharing my thoughts. But I would go a little farther. I have been hearing these comments, and they really do mean something. I know there's a lot of people who think we've had Marnes made up from the beginning. That's not true for me. But in the long run, I still do believe that this is right for our communities and for our kids, and most especially for our kids. But I would say that these issues that are challenges, they're not just something we expect the administration, if we do support this, that we expect the administration will figure out. We will direct them to figure out how we're going to come up with solutions for some of these challenges. And I don't think they're insurmountable. I think it's going to take a little bit of time. And I think this was quite fleshed out frankly, for 2 weeks, so I appreciate the effort, and maybe it's because of the experience you folks have had and the feedback you got that you were able to do this, but you're right, it's not complete, and I expect if we do support this, that there will be a much more complete plan coming, so.
I have a question for the superintendent.
One sec, Mike, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say, and I'm not gonna shock anybody, but I think this board is potentially gonna make a mistake with this vote. There's so much information we don't have. We don't have financial information. We don't have information about, extra costs. We don't have information about concrete measurable objectives that this is gonna meet. But that said, the board's gonna do what the board's gonna do.
Okay.
Okay, Bill, this is directed to you.
Yes, Ken.
Okay, being that this district does not come into effect till
July 1st.
July 1, 2019.
right?
Yes.
Can we legally, before that time, graduate a 5th grader from elementary school?
There is no official graduation from elementary school, it's only high school.
Well, as long as,
You could transfer everybody.
well, I'm just.
There is no graduation. There is no recognized
Well, no,
graduation.
As far as elementary school in this district is covered up to the 6th grade, correct? That's the model,
That
and
is
you
the
graduate from elementary school
Yes.
in the 6th grade. I'm
Yes.
just asking, are you sure we can legally do it?
Yes.
Okay, that's.
Very
that's-
confident.
That's all I wanted to know. Just wanted to make, you never know, those things sneak up on you.
I appreciate you asking.
That's what happened, the at-large vote for an extra year.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the middle school model presented tonight for the 2019-2020 school year. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstentions?
I have to abstain.
Yeah, there's 2 abstentions, 3 nays.
Explain.
Just to explain the abstentions, as a part of the Articles of Agreement, Howie, as a Wyndham representative, is not allowed to vote on anything that affects middle high school. Elementary school. It's late.
Well, then why can't he vote?
On this
It-
board.
it
On
has-
this
it-
board.
It affects the
Because-
population of the high school.
And the health of it.
It very
It's not,
specifically states.
this is a vote that affects the elementary school, and we're not moving the Wyndham students, so he doesn't vote. The students that we're voting on moving are not students that we've got a
I did
legal
check with the
opinion on
attorney.
this.
I did check with the attorney.
Yep. And Howie's not allowed to vote on this issue. And Christina is pending a waiver as the JV boys soccer coach at Leland and Gray, and so is not allowed to vote as well. So, employment.
Are you kidding?
No,
No,
she's applied for the waiver,
No,
but she
she's
has
applied
not
for the waiver,
received
but
the
since she
waiver,
doesn't
so
have it,
until
she
she
can't
receives the
vote.
waiver, she cannot vote.
Fabby.
yeah.
Thanks for coaching. You're welcome.
She wasn't gonna quit that.
We offered to fire her. So, we have three no's, and the rest, you were?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
So the ayes do have it. The motion passes. Thank you for all your participation, input, feedback, work in this.
We got some work to do.
And it's just started. Okay, next on the agenda, folks, is the school choice policy. Ken, I think we can make this pretty brief. I know Bill circulated 4 different policies that talk about intra-district school choice. We have voted to allow intra-district school choice. If we charge the policy committee to have a draft of a policy for this district, having the full resources of Bill and his office to get you any research, data, other policies you want, and you can talk to the board at meetings to ask us questions about what the entire board would like to see in a policy. Can you have something ready by October 15th?
By October 15th?
That would give you potentially
That
2
gives us,
board
what, 2
meetings to talk
meetings?
about. Yeah. Can it be done?
Do you think that can be done if there's any, I mean, we have a few models to look at that.
Yeah, so what I figured is that if your subcommittee meets 6 o'clock on the 17th, who's on the team? Mike? Lindsay? Ken?
But I have a game that night.
There you go, back into
Well,
trouble.
as long as we fully read those,
Right.
I think we can have a really fruitful discussion at 6 o'clock. And then in between on the 2nd, what I'd like to do is be able to have the committee update the board on October 2nd on what your thinking is, get some feedback from the board. That gives us another 2 meetings before the committee would make a recommendation to the board. Is that, I mean, I thought that was enough time.
Yeah, October
It's
15th.
probably enough time. Is that enough? Can that be the official answer?
Yes.
Well, in October 15th,
really
we could make a
try.
recommendation or ask questions, and then we would still have
Right.
the board would adopt the policy would be warned, there'd be another 60 days
But if you
of
guys decide you
input
need
on
more
that.
time, you
Right.
take more time.
And if you need more time, you need more time. But it's just, you know,
Set
is
a
that
target.
reasonable?
Yes.
It sets a target, exactly. All right.
Do we need a motion or don't?
We don't need a motion. We just have the policy committee agreeing to it. Okay, so
We'll try unless anything has to be vetted through a lawyer.
we can move them quickly too. So student on the board, I know Bob talked to us about this. I actually did some research and Leland and Gray never actually formally adopted a policy. We just took the VSBA guidebook, which there are copies of around here, and gave this to the student and said, this is your deal. And we've had 2 students on the board the whole time. There is not in the state of Vermont a student board policy that allows students to vote, nor is there one anywhere else in the country that I can find. And mostly what I find is all the legal opinions that say you cannot have a student vote. Now, I know they vote on the state board, but I wasn't able to find out how that works statutorily. So I don't know if we can give the student the vote, although this guide does talk about where the student gets a representative vote. It doesn't actually count, but they do get to voice their opinion. One of the 2 students votes the second one. But there's nothing, there, I can't find the Vermont statute that says, or like a written policy from the State Board of Education that says, you got it?
No, I just wanted to point out, you guys are an 11-member board, so when you think about that stuff, you don't, you want 2, not 1.
Yeah, we want 2 students, I think.
Honestly, if I could just say one thing.
Yes,
about this.
please.
This is an ongoing conversation that's happening, and you know, anybody who reads Brattleboro Reform or follows local politics, that there's a movement going to get, I forget, is it 16, 17-year-olds?
16 and 17-year-old voting.
To be able to vote locally and to be able to serve on local boards. So I do think that this is something that we should keep in our heads about where we might go. I'm not, unless we are confident that we have some examples of votes. I don't know, is it something, of voting students on boards? I'm not sure that's something we need to work on immediately. But I do think we should keep it on the radar screen, because I do think that if that moves forward, there does seem to be a movement to empower youth vote.
Yeah.
And we should pay attention to it, and I wouldn't be surprised if the legislature ends up taking up that conversation as well.
Okay.
I don't think we need to do anything right yet.
All right, Rick?
My opinion, personally, no student should be allowed to vote on the board unless they have been elected by the public. Now, if Vermont changes things that says that 17-year-olds can run for school boards, select boards, and they're on the ballot, then that's fine. But you're allowing a student who's essentially appointed to have a real honest-to-goodness vote is circumventing the whole election system, in my view.
Well, we're not actually proposing that they have a vote.
Oh, I know that. I'm just.
And you're right with
setting
statute.
the line in the sand right now. That's all.
You're just quoting VSA to us.
I think that's a legitimate concern.
Yeah, and it is a legitimate concern. I mean, I don't think we should stop that the fact that the student would not have a vote on the board. I don't think we should let that stop us from getting a couple of students on the board.
Well, can we make a motion to charge our administration to look for potential candidates for the coming first year of operation of this district?
Before you make a motion, I have 2 students who have been selected to serve on the Leland and Gray board already, which, as some of you may know, frequently doesn't meet.
Say that on
I hate to
TV.
say we
Bring 'em
know,
over.
but we
Yeah.
know.
So, if you would like, if this board would like to direct me, if it's simply an advisory capacity anyways, and they're just here to whatever, and they're not voting, there's no conversation, there's no policy needed to do that, and you guys just want to advise me or direct me to bring them to this meeting instead of the Leland and Gray one, I already have a returning senior from who's on the Leland and Gray board last year, and I have a new incoming junior who's ready to roll.
So we have been talking about holding Leland and Gray meetings prior to these meetings to hopefully get more quorums for our meetings. I think it would be great to frankly have them at both. If we get a quorum at a meeting, we're doing active business at our board related to what's going on at Leland and Gray, and I would miss their input. If it's a half an hour ahead, I know it's a burden for students to serve on any of these boards. I know that, I've watched them really struggle with it, but if they're willing to do it, I think, well, we won't be able, we don't keep them this late.
Yeah.
I mean, we can. So the fact is that I think we should have them at both.
So could I make a motion to invite the Leland and Gray student board members to join our district as student board members?
Yeah, student board members, sure.
Okay, I'm making that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Ken, do you want to speak to it?
I just think it's a fantastic idea. If we already have two candidates that have already been vetted and have been going through the process, they probably have more background on getting things done than this new board does.
Okay, 1 second. Alicia had her hand up before.
I think that that is a great, quick solution. I just want to not set the precedent that it only is Leland and Gray
Right.
children, that maybe, you know, especially some of these sixth graders and fifth graders would really appreciate going through the process.
Yes.
So and sort of following on that, because I was thinking along that line, have you spoken to did you say you'd spoken to these students and would they be willing to serve? Because this is not, you know, Leland and Gray board. This is a K-12, a pre-K-12.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned to them that this was on the agenda, we'd be talking about it and what their role could be and so on and so forth, and they're aware that it's being discussed.
But they're aware of who the board represents,
Yes.
so it would be farther than just Leland and Gray. I mean, they would, are these members of the 5 towns, these two kids?
One is and one isn't, I believe you said.
Yeah, one's a Newfane, the junior's a Newfane resident, I believe, and the senior, I want to say is a Wardsboro resident.
That might be.
But we've had that in the past, right?
Yeah, as long as they're educated at the West River District. Unless you guys make it a requirement.
I don't think we did before.
No, we had
Not a
Leland and Gray
voting-
board
If they're
members.
not a voting member, it shouldn't make a difference. They're there, you know, as
Yeah, I mean, distance
advisory capacity,
distance
more or less.
becomes a pain, but
But
That's true
a Wardsboro, a student from Wardsboro,
no, I'm just thinking like a Dover, like a tuition Dover kid
Yeah.
would have a distance problem. A Wardsboro
So
kid's
does
not
somebody
gonna
at the
have
other
too
side
much
of, you know, top of Wyndham.
Right.
I think, so.
Right.
well, I think that we should have a policy. I don't think that we should not have a policy. I think that we should actually come up with something and have an actual policy that says who is eligible to be on, what students are eligible, what do they, you know, have to do in order to become eligible. I think actually having something real instead of just following the guide.
Okay, well, the guide suggests that they write a letter of interest.
Yeah, I read that.
Okay, and the guide does restrict it to high school students.
Yep.
Which, you know, these meetings can go till 8:30 or 9, and I don't know,
9.
Or 10.
Or 10, or, yeah, I mean.
We need to set him somewhere where he can
But
see it.
you're right, we
Wait
should.
till budget season.
I hear the policy committee offering to write this policy.
Yeah, that's what I heard
That's
too.
great.
I didn't say anything.
That's what I just heard, is that the policy committee would like to write this policy.
Yep, let's do that.
What do you want to do?
Yeah,
Deal with the motion on the table.
Okay, right. As I say, so deal with the motion on the table. We can have we can invite these students here in advisory capacity, yay or nay, and then we can develop policy moving forward. So, any more discussion on that?
Can you repeat the motion on the table? Is it just the Leland and Gray students, or can we move to amend it to develop a policy that we do want it? What was the motion on the table?
The motion on the table was to invite the Leland and Gray board members to come to the student board members to the West River board in the student board member capacity.
For how long of a term?
You're saying the two that are already
The two that are already part of Leland and Gray would just come to
Gray
our.
would have 1 year, one would have two.
Finish it up, right?
Right, one would have 1 year, one would have two, because we have a
So for
senior and a
2 years.
junior. Well, yeah,
May I move to amend the motion that we develop a policy and also invite them to start to participate in the discussion on the policy?
We don't do a policy before we pass something. Haven't you just noticed that? We don't have a policy on
you
sixth
can
graders.
make that motion.
I
Is
move
there a
to
second
amend.
to that motion?
That we develop a policy,
Okay, there's
including all
not,
student grades.
okay, so, is there any discussion on the amendment?
I think I need a second, actually.
You got one.
Oh, I did? Oh, great. Oh,
Oh, you can't second either. I just said you can't vote. Okay, so is there a second then?
I'll second it,
All right, Drew will
and
second.
I'll call it.
Okay, so we're voting only on the amendment to develop the policy. Was there a timetable with that?
No.
Just develop a policy. Okay, so the amended motion is to invite the Leland and Gray board members to act as student board members on the West River board and to develop a policy that they will operate under. Correct? All in favor of that, please say aye.
Well, they, and apparently they and any other students, because the amendment is, it's open to all students, which means fifth, sixth graders.
That would be under the
Amendment was
policy.
Just a
Oh,
policy.
that's what.
Yeah,
The amendment was just about
the
policy.
amendment was just the policy. So then the policy will define what's the range.
No, but
All those in favor say
The amendment.
aye to the amendment. Okay. Opposed? Abstentions?
I oppose. I
Okay.
oppose the amendment.
Okay. Well,
Doesn't
the
matter.
ayes have it.
The ayes have it.
Okay,
anyway.
so now the motion is to invite the Leland and Gray student board members to be on the West River board and to develop a policy that they'll operate under, which we essentially just voted on, but any further discussion on that motion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Beautiful. Bring them. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, maybe. So for the budget meetings, we have a request. For the budget meetings, we have a request from our
So
administration.
Lori and I are double booked on every Monday, first and third Monday, that you guys and River Valleys are both scheduled. And understanding this is the first time that West River is going to be developing a budget and River Valley is going to be developing a budget. I'm going to guess you're going to want both of us there, along with all of your principals. And so I'm wondering if you guys would be willing, and if you're unwilling, then I'll go to them and find out if they're willing. Could you guys do Tuesdays in November and December?
Why do we always get bumped for the other district?
Well, I'm asking you first because I'm meeting with you now.
Why do we always get asked to get bumped?
Or you can ask your chair to negotiate it with the other chair, and that's fine with me too. I'm just saying you want access.
I'm just curious. It seems like we're the ones that are.
Emily, then Lynn.
So, where are both River Valleys and West River are meeting on the second Monday?
First and third
First and
Mondays.
third Mondays. Is that what we all? Thank you. Is it first and third?
Yes,
Because
but,
we only meet one.
but Joe and,
Once-
well, what happened is that
You
Joe
need
and
to-
Rich negotiated that I come to you on the second, the third Monday, and I go to them on the first Monday. But now you all have been adding meetings because
So
of,
that's, I guess, what I'm trying to get at. Now we're planning on meeting twice a month because of developing our first budget. Is that what the recommendation is? Because we really are only meeting once a month.
We're still running.
Now, I know we've thrown in extra meetings because
Sure.
we had extra things to talk about.
hey,
but
if you only want to meet once a month, that's fine.
There's no
I'm
way
not,
we're gonna budget that.
I don't have an opinion about that one way or the other. I'm trying to get some
I'm saying-
feedback from the chair and from the administration on what,
I think you should plan to meet twice a month until you have a budget.
okay, that's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
And if,
So
and
there's
then
4
I need
weeks
you
in a
guys to
month.
figure out when you're gonna meet, because
So I suggest that the chairs discuss it.
I'd be happy with that.
All right.
Let
There's
them
four
sue
Mondays.
us.
And to remind you, we are the larger district.
That's fine.
And we have all plans
just-
to be here on Monday.
Okay, and so have they.
Yes, but we're the larger district, so we have more cards in the deck.
All right, so you're gonna allow the chair to negotiate that?
That's great.
Before I negotiate, I just need one piece of information from you.
Yes.
Second and fourth Mondays, who's got those?
Nobody.
Okay.
So then River Valley's can take.
So
the
River
second
Valley's
floor.
is gonna move to second and fourth.
You go for it then.
I'll talk to Rich and we'll figure it out.
I like that. That's a good compromise, and they get to keep their Mondays. Nobody has to rearrange their
And
schedule.
then after
Let the
budget,
power
we're going
people
back to
battle it
one-
out.
That's right.
one-
I'm the
a
peon
month.
employee.
Right. Okay. And after budget, we go back to one a month.
Okay, man.
Because we have 8 months to plan
Negotiations
stuff.
committee.
Yep, negotiations committee. I know it was me, I believe it was Drew, and then at some point, Al's name got on there, but that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
It can't be Al.
it can't be you,
It
right?
can't- Well, it used to be, but it can't be now.
Right.
This young lady.
I was budget.
Oh,
I'm the only one
Okay,
that offered
so
myself up.
we can have, as long as we don't have a quorum, we're fine. Is anybody else interested in
Could you
serving
do
on the
the
negotiations
timeline?
committee?
You better tell the board what the
Um,
timeline is for.
Right now, they're suggesting an initial meeting for the 19th of September. It would be like an early evening thing, and it would be to establish ground rules, and then everybody gets out their calendar and we start talking. We try and do these things on Wednesdays, usually like 5:30 or 6. Each side meets separately ahead of time. Bill usually brings dinner. And we figure out where we're gonna go, and then we hash it out. We're gonna have to talk as a board about what we wanna do with versus, changes versus the existing contract, and we wanna probably get some feedback from our administrators about changes they may wanna see. This could go really easily, or it could be like really horrible depending on the changes we wanna make. But, the initial meeting would be Wednesday, the 19th, probably like 5 o'clock. And it would probably be less than an hour to just do the ground rules and plan the negotiations going forward. And then for the first 3 meetings, everybody can bring issues to the table. You can open, typically, the ground rules allow the first 3 meetings to open issues and things like that. And then after
Unless that
that,
changes.
you've agreed on it, and then you just hammer out what you've done. So, Drew and I'll do it. Anybody else interested?
I'm interested, but I don't know about. Until I get.
You're
the
right.
paper.
Well, get on that waiver, will ya?
I did.
You just can't vote.
Can she be on the negotiations committee?
You just can't vote on the negotiations committee until you get a waiver.
So you can serve.
Now you really actually have to do it. You're all like, yes.
Thanks for volunteering. Anybody else?
Joe, what time are you guys meeting on the 17th? Are you meeting at 7 or 7:30?
7 on the 17th.
And
We're
so-
meeting at 7, Leland and Gray will be
Leland and Gray at
6:30,
6:30.
or try.
Wait, we're back to our normal board.
Yeah.
And where is the policy committee going to meet since the Leland and Gray board will be meeting?
Oh, Leland and Gray take a room across the hall. We'll meet here.
We have
Yeah, you guys can take the room. Okay, so we have all 3 members of the negotiations committee. I'll send you an email. It'll be the 19th, early-ish. Okay?
Next week is policy.
Consent agenda, folks?
I'll move to
So
approve the
moved,
consent agenda.
seconded, whatever.
All right. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you all.